Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Richplanet 2019 UK tour. We'd like to inform you that shitty blue fleeces are available while stocks last. Please put your hands together for Richard D. Hall.
It's blue and it's shit. Welcome to Richplanet TV. I'm Richard D. Hall. I'd like to start by sharing with you a very sensitive personal issue that I've been trying to come to terms with for some time. It's something that's been causing me immense emotional turmoil, and I just can't keep it secret any longer. Ladies and gentlemen, I, Richard D. Hall, was born in the wrong body. For you, this might be funny, but for me, this is serious. This is serious. Because inside, I am not an engineer from County Durham. Inside, I am actually a world-class international footballer. I was supposed to be born into the body of Gareth Bale. I'm not quite sure what went wrong, but Gareth Bale is definitely the body I was supposed to be born into. I cannot live with this secret anymore. I've been in discussions with a surgeon who is going to perform pioneering footballer reassignment surgery. At first, I did not understand why this mistake happened, but I have recently discovered that it was caused by Brexit. Other people in the past have suffered with the same problem. There are many men, some of them still alive today, who believe they were supposed to be born into the body of Elvis, and others before them born into the body of Jesus, although that might not have been a good idea. And I am now certain all this is caused by Brexit. While I'm on the subject, I think something important is being forgotten about in the Brexit debate. I am sure many people in this audience will be in favour of the UK's exit from the European Union. I'll speak about that later. But just to remind you that by voting for Brexit, you voted for a corrupt state, a state which perpetrates fabricated terrorism on its subjects. Imagine that you were a dog and that your owner is a bit of a bastard, and whenever you sniff another dog's arse, he always kicks you in the bollocks. Your owner then meets a new woman and they decide to get married. And you think, hello, maybe the new wife will stop him from kicking me in the bollocks. But as time goes by, the new wife adopts the same practice and kicks you in the bollocks whenever you try and have a shit on the pavement. Time passes and your owners decide to get divorced, and you, the dog, are asked to choose in a referendum which owner you'd like to live with. And you think, the one that kicks me in the bollocks the least. Once you've given your vote, your owners then, for some strange reason, stay together for nearly 3 years. The moral of the story, even if Britain exits the EU, you will still be getting kicked in the bollocks. The solution to this problem is for you, the dog, to break free from your owners entirely and take steps to remove their power over you. This will only happen when the rancid, duplicitous, criminal UK and EU establishments are removed. And by establishment, I don't just mean political parties and political structures. Real power goes much deeper than domestic politics, as I'm sure many already know. I have shown in many of my investigations that the UK employs intelligence agencies which operate outside of the law and facilitate terrorism, and often conceal the crimes of our police force. The EU also facilitates acts of terrorism, The EU and the UK both operate flawed monetary systems, which disempower and enslave their populations through the engineering of debt and by allowing usury. The EU and the UK both use alleged climate change to seek to limit your freedoms. The EU and the UK both use the issue of mental health to demonise and discredit many perfectly normal people and thus remove their rights. The EU and the UK both comply with the cover-up of discoveries made in space and comply with the cover-up of hidden technologies, including weapons technologies and energy technologies. So please do bear all of that in mind if and when we become free from the European Union. I'm going to be talking about the former Labour MP Jo Cox tonight, and as you might know, she apparently was instrumental in getting a government position created for, drumroll, loneliness. Yes, the Minister for Loneliness. Tracy Crouch, Minister for Sport and Civil Society, was appointed the ministerial lead for loneliness in January 2018. Is this really an issue that is the government's responsibility? Is somebody having a joke here, bearing in mind what really may have happened to Jo Cox? If you are lonely because you smell, does that mean we should have a minister for smelliness? Should we have a minister for being a bit down in the dumps? That's already covered, Richard, by the health minister under mental health. How about a minister for flatulence? The perfect job for Johnny Fartpants. Monty Python were ahead of their time with the minister for silly walks. It seems we've almost reached that point. Or how about a minister for preventing women from getting stuff injected into their lips, which makes their lips look like a baboon's arse, or men's lips. The other day I went to visit my MP Gerald Jones at his weekly surgery. Gerald is openly gay and lives with his partner Tyrone Powell, who is also his parliamentary secretary. I sat down in front of them both and was asked, "How can we help you?" To which I replied, "I'd like to raise the Cox issue with you." Whoops, there's nothing like a bit of carry-on humour to start the tour. Okay. Thanks for coming along, everyone. I really do appreciate it because 90% of the funding for Richplanet comes from these lectures. So by coming along this evening, you've helped to fund another investigation or another film. So I'm going to talk in part one for about an hour and a half. We'll have a break at 9:15 for 15 to 20 minutes. And in part two, I'm going to talk for 45 minutes about the animal mutilation phenomenon and also mention some information about the Rendlesham Forest UFO case. So part one, I've entitled "Everybody's an Extremist Nowadays." And they're using this word, both the government, politicians, the media are using this word extremism to describe people who merely just don't agree with them. The government even tried to define it, but couldn't. No one would agree with their definition of extremism. Religions wouldn't agree with them. So, in essence, it is a meaningless term, but they use it all the time, as you will see in today's talk. Now, a guest on my show recently stated that staged terrorism is one of the tools of statecraft in the modern era. Now, I think most people in this room, if you watch Richplanet, you'll understand what that statement means. Problem is, most people outside of this room, they don't know what that statement means. Let me spell it out. The vast majority of terrorism that we see reported in our mainstream media is not carried out by the groups that they blame it on. The vast majority of terrorism is carried out by governments and government agencies. It's as simple as that. And it's done for a variety of reasons. It may be done for internal reasons, reasons internal to the country to bring about changes in the law, or it may be done for external reasons. For example, to demonize a foreign state in order to create an excuse to take military action against that state. But we've seen a slightly different flavour of this statement recently, which is that staged hate and extremism is one of the tools of statecraft in the modern era, and you'll see that as I progress with this lecture. Now, I thought I'd give you my opinion on Brexit because it's been such a big issue over the last couple of years. This is just my opinion. I'm not expecting everyone to agree with me. Opinion and some observations. Now, I said in a previous Richplanet show that being asked to vote in the referendum was a bit like being asked, which dog turd would you like to stand in? Would you like to stand in the light brown dog turd or the dark brown dog turd? That's not a racist joke. It was just the first two turds I found with a Google search. You might think that's a bit harsh, saying something like that. Well, I don't think it is if you consider the issue of fabricated terrorism. Because if you look at the fabricated terror that's happened in the UK and in the EU, they are both extensive. So I've gone back to Lockerbie in the UK. All of these terrorist incidents have been covered, some of them in great detail on Richplanet, such as the London nail bombings, the London tube bombings, the Cumbria shootings, the Joe Cox attack, which I'm going to talk about, the Manchester Arena bombing, which I'm going to talk about later. So there's no doubt in my mind that most, if not all of these, are fabricated terrorist incidents. In other words, the public have been duped into believing who perpetrated them. And the same applies for all of these European fabricated terrorist incidents. So this is why I make that statement, that it's like being asked, which turd would you like to stand in? Because states within the EU allow it to happen, and our own state allows it to happen. So until it stops, then I will continue with this statement. But what about the issue of sovereignty? Is it fair to use the same analogy? Well, let's just consider the issue of sovereignty, because Britain has governed itself for hundreds of years, okay? So is it right that we should suddenly, over the last 30 or 40 years, start allowing another entity to make laws that it will affect everyone in this room? And I would agree that it's not right without public acceptance and a public vote. So I do agree with the principle of a referendum if laws are going to be made in Europe. So let's just think about this issue of sovereignty. It's where you draw a line around a particular part of the earth, and all of the decisions and the organization of government is done by those people inside that line without any external influence from outside. Now, I remember when the Brexit vote came through, I watched a David Icke YouTube video, and David Icke was punching the air because we left the European Union, or voted to leave the European Union. But who is the head of state of the United Kingdom? It's the Queen, isn't it? Who is a shape-shifting lizard, isn't she? According to him, right? So why would he be punching the air? Now, I don't believe that the Queen can shape-shift into a lizard, but I'm happy to accept that statement as a euphemism that she resides over a tyrannical regime that allows fabricated terrorism. The point I'm making is that it's not sovereignty that gets rid of tyranny. So North Korea would be considered a strongly sovereign nation, right? But it's also considered to be a tyrannical nation. Okay, so sovereignty does not get rid of tyranny. What prevents tyranny is transparency and truth. All right. As soon as truth disappears, democracy disappears. All right. Truth is a prerequisite of democracy, right? Because if you were being fed lies in your media, and you go to cast your vote in an election, and you've got a head full of lies, you're going to make the wrong decision. All right. That's why we need truth and transparency to prevent tyranny, because you can't make that right decision unless you've got the truth in front of you. So as soon as truth disappears, democracy immediately disappears with it. right? And by regaining our sovereignty is not a guarantee to get rid of tyranny, right? The two are mutually exclusive. I'm not against living in a world which is full of states that are sovereign states, right? Which is what a lot of people want in the UK. But I'm just pointing out that that doesn't get rid of tyranny in the world. Let me give you a simple example of where transparency exposed a tyranny. In Portugal, in their criminal law, when they run a criminal investigation, all right, after so many years after that case is finished, the police files, all of the investigative files, are put into a library, and the public can go and view them. They can download those police files, all right? So I think that increases the standard of policing in Portugal, because anyone can go and examine an investigation. We don't have that in the UK, all right? So what happened with the Madeleine McCann case, that was a tyranny, i.e. the UK running a cover-up in a foreign nation, and it was only exposed when the Portuguese released their files and everyone could see the Portuguese police investigation. And if you've watched my films, you will know that the Madeleine McCann is a huge cover-up. But it's a cover-up that wasn't being run by the Portuguese, because they have a transparent criminal system. It was a cover-up that they tried to run from another country, and they succeeded by leaning on the Portuguese government, right? So whichever system we have, whether we continue to live in sovereign nations, or whether we go to a European government or a world government, right? The point is, tyranny is only challenged if we have transparency and truth, okay? Now, what was the reason why the Brexit referendum happened? This is the official reason. I don't state this as the real reason. On the 23rd of January 2013, under pressure from many of his MPs and from the rise of UKIP, David Cameron announced that a Conservative government would hold an in or out referendum on EU membership before the end of 2017. Now, the key word in that statement, I think, is under pressure. He was under pressure. It states there he was under pressure from UKIP and some of his own party. Now, I would argue that those people in UKIP, or some of them, and in his own party, were aligned with the City of London Corporation, that some of that pressure was coming from that entity, which I need to explain a little bit about. So the City of London Corporation, I'm not talking about London Town, I'm talking about the square mile, which is where all of the financial business is done, where the banking industry resides. The richest people in the world work there, all right? Now, the thing about the City of London is that over the centuries, right, and it does go back a long way, it has negotiated concessions with the British Parliament. So there are laws that apply to you and me about, for example, if we make a profit in our enterprise, you must tell the government how much money you're making, otherwise you go to prison for tax evasion. The same laws don't apply in this square mile, because the City of London Corporation, as I say, has negotiated concessions, and there are certain laws to do with financial transparency that do not apply to the City of London Corporation. So this tiny little square in the centre of London is effectively an offshore tax haven right in the middle of London. And it has a lot of power within Parliament as well. They even have their own seat in Parliament. Their seat is called the Remembrancer. So there's a guy who sits in front of the Speaker of the House, and he is representing the City of London Corporation, and it's his job to make sure that Parliament don't get rid of any of the concessions that the City of London Corporation have gained, all right? So it's a huge loophole, it's a tax loophole, if you like. It's ran for a long time, and it needs to be gotten rid of, because it means that people who work there are operating to a different law to the rest of us. Some people consider the City of London Corporation a different country to the rest of the UK. And these tax havens are connected to other tax havens which are offshore in the Crown dependencies. So there's a whole world network of tax havens where the richest people in the world put their money so that they don't have to pay tax. Now, the European Union are well aware of all of this, and they are a very new government compared to our, you might call it, quirky government with these concessions that have been bought over the years. So they just see the City of London as some sort of, well, or the arrangements that it has managed to negotiate, they see that as just antiquated. It needs to be gotten rid of. So the European Union have made it quite clear that they want to get rid of all of the British tax havens. Now you might say, well, no, the EU is not responsible for collecting tax. It doesn't set tax rates. That's true, but just consider this from the EU's own website. It says the EU does not have a direct role in collecting taxes or setting tax rates. The amount of tax each citizen pays is decided by their national government, along with how the collected taxes are spent. The EU does, however, oversee national tax rules in some areas, particularly in relation to EU business and consumer policies, to ensure businesses in one country don't have an unfair advantage over competitors in another, and taxes don't discriminate against consumers, workers or businesses from the other EU countries. So that right there gives the EU the power to be able to get rid of British tax havens. And they've made it perfectly clear that that's what they want to do. They've drawn up new legislation on tax which would do just that. So this new anti-tax avoidance package from the European Union was implemented in January this year. And if it was implemented in Britain, it would probably bring an end to the billions of pounds that are lost in uncollected taxes due to people hiding money in tax havens. And this would not happen in the UK, this kind of legislation, right? Due to the City of London's power over Parliament. My opinion is that Britain should get rid of the tax havens themselves. We should do it ourselves without help from the European Union. But it seems that we've got this parasite in the City of London Corporation, which has got too much influence over our Parliament, so it can't do it itself. And I don't think it's any surprise that the main players who are pushing for Brexit are former City of London Corporation employees who are mega rich. They might be doing what you want by getting us out of the EU, but I don't think they're doing it on your behalf. I think they're working on the behalf of the City of London Corporation. Here's an article from the Express recently which said that Brexit Britain will be a huge tax haven in the middle of Europe and the UK will prosper. Well, who will prosper? Mega rich people will avoid tax. That's what it means. I don't see the people of the UK necessarily prospering. If we've got tax rules, the taxes need to be fair. I'm all for having a low tax economy, right? But the taxes need to be the same for everyone. And Parliament was going to address this issue. It was all planned for the 4th of March. The time was set in order to debate the issue of tax haven transparency. But it was pulled at the last minute. And this was very unusual for this to happen. I believe this was probably influenced from the City of London to get this debate pulled, because if the debate had gone ahead, it would have been clear, right, at this sensitive time of Brexit, that the solution to the tax haven issue can only be solved by Europe and by the European Union. That's not me making a pro-European stance, by the way. I'm just saying that's how it seems to be. Europe has said that they will end the British tax havens. So why is Brexit proving so difficult to get through? I mean, it was just delayed the other day. And in a nutshell, you've just got to look at how MPs said they would vote before the referendum. So this was a survey in 2016 of all MPs, how they were going to vote in the referendum. 480 wanted to remain. So 74% of MPs are Remainers. Right? So that, in a nutshell, is why we still haven't left the European Union, despite the referendum. And let's look at the two leaders that have presided over this. Firstly, David Cameron. Well, we're led to believe he was a Remainer. But just listen to what he says here. He's, in this quote here, he's campaigning to stay in the European Union. This is just before the Brexit referendum.
If we want to vote to leave this organisation, let's vote to leave it. But let's not do it on the basis of three things that are completely untrue.
So he said, if we want to vote to leave this organisation, let's vote to leave it. But let's not do it on the basis of three things that are completely untrue. Now let's imagine that he said that when campaigning in a general election for the Conservative Party. It would sound like this. if we want to vote to elect a Labour government, let's vote to elect it. But let's not do it on the basis of three things that are completely untrue. So that tells me that David Cameron was probably not a Remainer. I think I feel that he knew all along he was going to fall on his sword after a referendum, and I suspect he was under influence from the City of London when he made the decision to hold a referendum, because that statement there is similar to what the City of London wants. It wants to be out of any EU tax legislation, but it wants to retain its markets in Europe. Let's have a look at Theresa May. So this is 2016 when she makes this particular statement.
It's a question of what is best for Britain's future. And I think if we look at the challenges we will face, the challenges of security, of trade and the economy, that actually looking ahead, Britain's prosperity, the opportunities for people living here in the UK will be more secure, will be better if we're inside the European Union.
He asks me about the government's position on the European Union. Well, it's very simple. We want to deliver on the road to the British people. That means that we will bring back control of our laws, our borders and our money.
So she did a 180-degree U-turn. So I believe that Theresa May is a Remainer. And that, I think, explains why we haven't left. Why would you choose someone who is a Remainer to go to the European Union and negotiate leaving? That is like putting a vegetarian in charge of an abattoir, is it not? Why would you choose her? So we've got the European Union don't want Britain to leave. We've got the person doing the negotiating doesn't want to leave. And we've got 74% of MPs don't want to leave. What a surprise, we haven't left. But I think Theresa May's role is very much a compromise character. This is what I think they're trying to do at the Home Office. They just want a fudge, a compromise to try and carry Brexit through, but without any of the extremes. And our other role, I think, has been to try and hold the Conservative Party together. Because what we've seen in Brexit, we have seen bits breaking off the main political parties. Now, I think that's a good thing that's come out of Brexit, right? It's a one good thing that's come out of it, that we're seeing the major political parties breaking up into smaller bits. I would smash them all up and break them up into 100 pieces and start from scratch. We might get some honesty and truth in our political parties. But it's a nightmare for the Home Office and the security services when you have new parties springing up, because they haven't been infiltrated, right? They've got the main political parties compromised and infiltrated, right? New political parties come along, that's a nightmare for the security services, and I think that's what her role has been during Brexit. So have both sides been playing fair? Let's consider this Northern Ireland border issue just for a second, because we've heard MPs saying this over and over again, that if we leave the EU without remaining in the single market or in a customs union, that there will need to be border checks on goods in Northern Ireland because of the different tariffs. And that's suddenly going to make terrorism happen again. I think, well, really? Why would it? And just as MPs were discussing this, lo and behold, we get a terrorist attack on the border in Northern Ireland. So this was in January this year, just as MPs were talking about that issue. And Derry is right on the border. So just consider that and ask yourself, well, okay, is this a resurgence of the old troubles in Northern Ireland, or has this been done because of Brexit, right? My money would be on the latter, right? I think this is it's almost a threat, where what's being stated is that, well, you need to stay in the EU and accept these reforms, otherwise you might get a bit of this. So it's an example of staged terrorism being used as a tool of statecraft in the modern era. I'd be surprised if that bomb attack was arranged by people who live in Northern Ireland or in Ireland. Okay, now, I don't know if you've sat and watched the parliamentary channel for more than about 20 hours at a time. As Bill Hicks once said, I've got to cut that out, right? And I have watched a lot of the Brexit debates, and it became obvious to me that some of the key players, they're not just speaking for themselves or their constituents, they are working for outside interests. And here are a few that I would suggest are agents or working for outside interests. There are a lot more. This is just a few examples. So all of these on the right, I would put these in the category of working as agents of the European Union. Rees-Mogg, I think he's an agent working for the City of London. David Davis, he's just a slimy git, really. I don't know who he's working for, but I didn't trust him as far as I could throw him. And have both sides playing fair. So if you look into Brexit, two of the financiers for both sides are on the screen here. Aaron Banks, who financed the Leave campaign. So George Soros, who's allegedly been, well, the alternative media often criticised George Soros for his dirty tricks. And both sides have been pointing the finger, stating that the campaign of the other side is not fair or it's breaking the law or what have you. So, for example, Aaron Banks, he used money which came from offshore, so nobody knows really where it come from, and it's supposed to be money that was made in Britain. That's one of the rules. Also, you've got use of Facebook, and have they been breaking any laws by using Facebook, etc. Now, I spoke about the Panama Papers in my recent film about Joe Cox. In my opinion, the Panama Papers is all to do with Brexit. Let me explain. If you're a very rich person and you're going to hide money in one of these offshore tax havens, or hide the making of money in an offshore tax haven, how it works is that they will use a law firm, and that law firm creates a shell company or a trust, and money and assets are put in the shell company or the trust. All right, so law firms are a key component to the offshore tax haven racket. And 2.5 months before Brexit, there was a leak from one of the main law firms that work in this field. So this was 2.6 terabytes of data, and there was, I think, over 200,000 financial entities exposed. So lots and lots of wealthy people who had their money in British tax havens were named. And the mainstream media were picking people out like David Cameron's father or Sarah Ferguson or various footballers, etc. So it came to light many of the people who have money hidden in tax havens. Okay, but I don't think that was the purpose of this leak, to expose people within them. My opinion, 2.5 months before Brexit, the intention was to show the world, look at all this uncollected tax sitting here. Look at it all. The British government isn't capable of collecting tax from these very wealthy people. So Britain needs to reform its tax system to get rid of this, to get rid of the tax havens. Oh, and by the way, the European Union want to do that. So it was a pro-EU measure, in my opinion, the whole leaking of the Panama Papers. And you ask the question, who the hell had the power and money to leak these papers? Because the whole offshore tax haven thing works on secrecy. You know, you don't leak this sort of information, but someone had the power and influence to do that. Now, this article written by Jo Cox, because I believe she wrote most of it, was really the key for me to decide what the probable motive for the Jo Cox operation was. Because when the Panama Papers were released, the British Parliament discussed it, and then they had a vote on it to say, are we going to take action because of these Panama Papers in order to sort out the tax haven issue, or are we not? The British Parliament voted not to, right? Most MPs forgot about the Panama Papers then, and they continued campaigning for Brexit, whichever side they were on. But not Jo Cox. She was still banging on about the Panama Papers and tax havens. This article, I think, is from May the 11th, all right? Just 1 month before she disappeared. So she says, David Cameron needs to tackle the tax havens in Britain's own backyard. This is why I think that this leak has something to do with her disappearance. Now, when the Panama Papers were leaked, there was an 1,800-word statement given out justifying why it was done, but it was an anonymous statement because these documents were leaked anonymously. So the word John Doe is like an Americanism for Joe Bloggs, similar use of the name. So 1800 word statement. Now in my film I suggested that Joe Cox may have been involved in preparing this statement. I'm not so sure now, because what I did, I sent the 1800 word statement to Peter Hyatt. You may have seen him on Richplanet. He's an expert in statement analysis and he can pick things out. And one of his fortes is analysing anonymous witness statements and trying to guess who has written that statement. So I sent him this 1800 word statement and he was in his element. He loved it, right? So I paid him to produce some analysis and he's produced a 34-page report, all right? Now, I'm not going to read that whole report out now. I will publish it at some point. But just to give you the salient points from Peter Hyatt's analysis of the Panama Papers John Doe statement, this is what he picked up. Now, as I read these out, see if any names spring to mind with regards to these characteristics. The author considers himself an elite or anointed of who must make decisions for others. The author is both experienced and conversant in financial and business dealings. The author is not in poverty. Finance is a priority to this author. The author is frustrated. The author is not a genuine whistleblower and is concealing his real motive. The author likely works with or is associated with a government entity, not a private attorney nor private firm, and has some sort of influence. The author has a pro-European mentality. Time and timing are significant to the author. Personality traits include a strong intellect, education, and a disconnect from human empathy. His view of small versus great, states' rights versus federal, is consistent with support for globalism over democracy. The author expects praise and honour. Anyone care to shout out a name? Tony Blair. Any more names? Kenneth Clark, interesting. Soros, lady at the front, yeah. All good suggestions, I think. I think Tony Blair's been the most common name that people have shouted out in previous lectures, and also George Soros. Some people think that Tony Blair is like a puppet of George Soros, and he's essentially working for George Soros. Personally, I don't know if this is correct, my money is on Soros. And one of the things that Peter picked up on, I said that the law firm is called Mossack Fonseca. So that's the name of two lawyers, Mossack and Fonseca. And Peter picked out in the analysis, he said, does the author have a personal issue or link with Mossack, not Fonseca? So who is Mossack? Jürgen Mossack is the son of a prominent Nazi. Panama tax scam lawyer is the son of Nazi SS officer from dreaded Death's Head Division who fled to South America. So is that the reason? Let's just say it is Soros. I don't know that it is. And we know that Soros is a Holocaust surviving Nazi. Sorry, Holocaust surviving Jew. Well, some people think he was a Nazi actually, or in with them, right? So is that why Soros, if this is a Soros document, has an issue? Okay, but can we link, if it was Soros, can we link Soros to Joe Cox? Well, this is Aidan Harris, who works for George Soros's Open Society Foundations. So the Open Society Foundations is an organization run by Soros, which ostensibly is good causes that he puts billions of pounds into, but my opinion is they're social engineering of different types. So Aidan Harris, who works for the Open Society Foundation, states on the website, the day before the referendum vote, I attended a memorial in London for Joe Cox MP, and a friend of mine and many in our field. So Joe Cox is a friend of many in the field of the Open Society Foundations. So that's a link between Cox and Soros, I would suggest. So let's come on to the film. You may have seen it coming in here. If you haven't seen it, it's a 3-hour-long film. Please watch it. You can watch it free online, or it's 10 quid if you want to buy it here. Why is this film so important, and why is the Joe Cox issue so important? It's important to me for this reason, that she is an MP. That's it, right? Because all of those terrorist attacks that I showed you before, that I listed, right? If an MP was to stand up in Parliament and start talking about that and start suggesting that any of those incidents were fabricated, they would be kicked out of their party straight away. So it's banned from Parliament, really, suggesting things are fabricated, that terrorism is fabricated. MPs have to go along with the official narrative of any terrorist incident. So I saw this case as being possible to get MPs interested in it because it involved their colleague. Yeah, it involved their colleague in a fabricated terrorist incident, as I'm going to come on to. So surely there must be some MPs who want to know the truth about this. Okay, because the only route that I can see of preventing fabricated terrorism is to try and get MPs talking about it, so that Parliament can then put pressure on government. Okay, let's go through a few of the points of my film before I come on to the campaign that I've been involved with in order to get this film recognised. The official story, I'm not saying this is the truth, this is the official story, states that Jo Cox was planning to attend this library here, arrived in her car, she drove up this street, and she was planning to meet constituents in her weekly surgery. Before that happened, a guy called Tommy Mayer is alleged to have walked down this road from his house, Gelderd Road, turned right onto Nelson Street, waited here for a while for a car to pull up here, then he's ran down the street, he's then shot her in the head, he's then stabbed her several times, he's then shot her again, he's then walked calmly down Market Street onto Union Street, and the official story claims that he walked up this road and into this garden where he's supposed to have discarded some clothing and then headed off again up this street here, and he's walked for nearly a mile where he's arrested. So he's arrested a mile away from the murder scene. So this is the guy that they arrested, and this is the guy that was seen on CCTV before carrying out the attack, and he was witnessed by many witnesses. The guy who was arrested is Tommy Mayer. He's currently in prison for this crime. The guy who was seen carrying out the attack is a different man. So Tommy Mayer was wearing gardening shoes with steel toe caps. He was wearing a black baseball cap. He didn't have a coat on, and he has a particular walking pattern. The guy who was seen doing the attack had a white baseball cap, had brown trainer type shoes on. He was wearing a jacket and has a different walking pattern and a limp. Okay, so they're two different people, and the film shows why that is. This is the guy that they arrested and is in prison. This is the guy who did the attack. Two different people. And as I say, Tommy Mayer was wearing steel toe cap shoes, and the perpetrator, whatever he did, was wearing light brown or brown light shoes. So I was in touch with a chap who was looking at or analysing all of the CCTV footage, and he's a martial arts expert, and he was telling me that he was looking very closely at the walking pattern on all of the different CCTV images. So I arranged to meet up with him. He's called Damon. You may have seen him in the film. And the first thing that we did was we identified a piece of CCTV that we know is Tommy Mayer. So this is Tommy Mayer walking into the library the day before of the attack. So Damon was able to get a good picture in his mind of Tommy Mayer's walking style. And what we did, we compared this person with all of the other CCTV footage. Okay, so these are all separate CCTV clips. These are still images, but the rest are CCTV sequences. And very simply, the conclusion was that all of the CCTV sequences showing a man in a white or light cap was not Tommy Mayer, and the CCTV sequences showing a man in a black cap was Tommy Mayer. Simple as that. The walking pattern matched with the man in the black cap. I'll just show you a clip from the documentary.
If we go to the footage of Tommy walking into the library, it's actually very clear footage, which is good, and you can see Tommy's walking pattern. Tommy brings his foot, or the front part of his foot, up at almost a 45-degree angle. So it's quite a high front stride. Due to the pattern of walking, the back part of the heels on his boots would probably be worn down because he throws the front foot up like that. So the heel hits the ground. That's quite a distinct walk. And also when Tommy is walking out of the library, you see his walking pattern from behind. And as he crosses the road, you can quite clearly see in every stride the front of the foot comes up to this level. There's no splaying of the feet outwards, or there's no inversion of the feet inwards. Tommy has got a very distinct way of walking, and you can clearly see as he walks onto the pavement, he's got much smaller feet. And once again, it's a different walking pattern. If you break it down, slow it down, and go into still frames, you will see that this guy has got a slight inversion with his feet as he walks, okay, pigeon-toed. And the left foot, I've noticed, this is the clearest we have, the left foot slightly swings. It's a very strange walk. So he's not only pigeon-toed, it's got a slight swing to it. It's almost like he throws it. This guy's wearing different shoes as well. Okay, he's not wearing heavy-duty boots. I would say, actually, it looks like this guy's wearing no more than a loafer-type shoe. Maybe a black pair of trainers, something like that, but it's certainly not heavy-duty boots that you see Tommy wearing. You will see, especially after the alleged shooting, as he's walking away, it's a totally different walking pattern. Now, how I've studied Tommy's walking pattern and this guy's walking pattern, they're totally different. This guy walks with what's known as being pigeon-toed. Okay, his feet are inverted as he walks. I also notice a slight limp from his left.
This is Joe Cox's car. The attack has just ended. We can see commotion going on around the car.
When he's walking down Market Street, you can clearly see the pigeon-toed walk, the stride, and mixed in with this, what I believe is to be a sprain, the guy once again has average sized feet. He doesn't have big feet. In my own opinion, the Market Street and Chapel Street is not Tommy.
Now, the most obvious thing that's different about these two characters is the colour of the baseball cap. So the police had to come up with a reason as to why the man they arrested had a different colour cap. And what they said was that the perpetrator was wearing two baseball caps. So he's wearing a black baseball cap underneath this white baseball cap, and as he's fleeing the scene, he takes his white cap off and he chucks it into a garden, even though nobody actually saw him do that. I don't know if any of you have tried wearing two baseball caps. I tried it, as you see. Try going into your local pub with two baseball caps on, order a pint of lager, and see how many people laugh at you. Because the perpetrator, right, is alleged to have been just a few feet from at least two witnesses, 2, 3, 4 witnesses. And none of them said, well, the funny thing was he was wearing two baseball caps. Nobody said that, all right, because he wasn't wearing two baseball caps. So what really did happen? Well, I do believe that the real Tommy Ware did walk down into the village that day, because I interviewed 2 people who are friends with him and saw him walking past their house. Now, once he's walked past their house, there's really only 2 ways he can go. You can go to the business park or down into town. I believe he did walk down into town, so he took this route. And you need to watch the film to get the full understanding, but I believe that he was being lured to this particular garden here, and all that is explained in the film. But I don't think he did go into the garden. I suspect he went to his mother's house, just popped to his mother's house before going to the garden. So I suspect he was followed shortly afterwards by the perpetrator down Gelderd Road, who took a similar path. Now, in the documentary, I revealed that in the Daily Mirror, they said that there was a man witnessed with binoculars lying down between 2 gravestones. The only gravestones that I could find was in the grounds of this chapel just here. So I believe he was hiding behind this wall here. And if that's the case, it would give him a perfect view of Tommy Mayer coming down here and then going into the garden. Now it's stated in that Daily Mirror article that it was a schoolgirl who saw the man with binoculars shortly after the attack. However, if she was a schoolgirl, I would imagine she would be in her dinner hour. School's dinner hour is from 12 till 12:55, all right? The murder occurred at 12:53. So I think it's possible, if she was on her dinner hour, right, we haven't got the name of the schoolgirl, so we can't find her, but if she was on her dinner hour, I think she's seen the man with binoculars before the murder, which would make sense as they were getting their patsy in position before the murder. Okay, the BBC made a documentary all about the Joe Cox case called Death of an MP, which they usually do with these major terrorist incidents, and as always, it followed the official story. It didn't try and find anomalies. It didn't do what journalists are supposed to do and ask awkward questions. It just went with the official story given to them by the police. And here they are. DI Nick Wallen and DS Andy Cass, the Joe Cox bent cops. Now, when I saw this documentary, I realised that both these police officers were lying in their statements. So I transcribed all of their words and I sent them to expert statement analyst Peter Hyatt. Note the shitty blue fleece. You can download the analysis from this link. And when I got the analysis back from Peter, that was confirmation to me from a completely unbiased source, right, that this was a setup and Tommy Mayer was innocent. Getting the analysis was confirmation that these two police officers are corrupt and were fabricating and were involved in an operation to frame Tommy Mayer. Now, I did want to go and interview Peter with regards to this case. I wanted him in the film, right? He didn't want to go on camera. I don't know why. It may be because he's not happy condemning two police officers, because he does work with police officers in America, because Peter normally will be looking at criminals' witness statements, not police officers. So maybe it went against the grain for him a little bit. I don't know. But my intention was to have him in the film. And we are collaborating on a number of other projects, Peter and I, so I do intend to go and meet him again and record some more footage with him. So in the film, I go through the actual attack itself. So Joe Cox's car was about here. She gets out the back, and as soon as she gets out, she's attacked at this point here, allegedly with a bullet to the head and then stabbed in the chest. And there are many witness accounts that you can find from all of these different vantage points. All right, so there was actually 3 people in this shop here, guy coming out the sandwich shop, woman in the cake shop. There was 2 witnesses at this old people's home. So a lot of witnesses, and despite the fact that there were so many witnesses, there's still some doubt over what really happened, because there are various anomalies. I'm just going to go through them. Firstly, that witnesses described blood but no injuries. I couldn't find one witness statement which described an injury, such as part of the skull coming away when she's been shot, or perhaps clothing being removed in order to stem bleeding, that kind of thing. All you get, she's lying face down with her coat still on and blood, right? So we don't get description of actual injuries. The casualty remained in Market Street for 54 minutes. The ambulance arrived after 11 minutes. And despite the ambulance being there so early, why didn't they take the body straight to hospital? The body was not received by a hospital and instead was driven to London. So this comes from a source who claims that his relative is high up at Leeds Hospital and states that, as I say, the body was not received by Leeds Hospital. The jury were not shown a body, and they weren't even shown photographs of injuries or the body. It's very unusual. It's not unheard of, but it's very unusual for that to happen. Close family members showed no grief at the funeral and at the trial. You've really got to watch the videos of this to understand that, right? Now, when you add all this together, you do question, was she really killed? And in last year's lecture, I suggested that I thought that she was killed. I have changed my stance on this. Andrew Johnson pointed me to a film called The Boston Unbombing, which I watched with interest. So I'm going to digress for a few minutes just to explain what this film is about. Please go and watch it. You can watch it from this link. The Boston bombing, in my opinion, is probably the best expose of a fabricated terrorist incident that you'll find, right? And that's probably why YouTube tried to ban it. So the Boston bombing occurred in 2013 at the site of the Boston Marathon. So here's a photograph from that bombing. It looks a little bit gruesome at first sight. You've got blood on the ground and this fence has collapsed and various casualties being treated, all right? So this is where it happened. This road here is where the Boston Marathon runners run down. That's the finish line, all right? So a couple of hours after the winner crosses the finish line, a bomb goes off in the crowd. So there was spectators all along here. A bomb goes off here. A few minutes after that, another bomb went off there. Now, in these neighbouring buildings, there was a couple of people in the apartments who started taking photographs immediately after the blast. One person in this apartment and another one in that apartment. So the person in this apartment took 26 high-definition photographs between 2 and 14 seconds after the blast, and in this apartment, 65 photographs between 19 seconds and 20 minutes. So the main evidence used in this film are these photographs, along with other video evidence and testimony evidence. So the photographs are put in order, and the guy who's made the film, he works out what really happened. You need to watch the film in order to get a grasp of it, right? But nobody died, nobody was injured. It was a disaster preparedness exercise, and they were using all sorts of fancy Hollywood-type techniques to make these injured people look injured. They even used one guy who was already an amputee before the event to make it look like his leg had been blown off. But all kinds of other methods using fake blood and what have you. So there's various types of people identified in this exercise. So you've got the crisis actors who've got, as I say, various types of things fitted to them to make them look like they're bleeding or what have you. So they're lying around the scene pretending to be injured. You've got your first responders who are treating them. And you've also got people which he refers to as set managers. So these aren't directly involved in the actual exercise, but what they're doing is they're walking around the scene looking for members of the public and making sure that they're kept back so they don't see anything or they don't get any photographs, all right? But photographs were taken by these two individuals in these apartments, and the whole thing has been exposed. So if you go on Wikipedia, it will say there were 3 deaths and 264 injured, but there were no deaths. It was a disaster preparedness drill, nobody died and nobody was hurt. So once I watched that and I realised what the extent of faking can be in some of these incidents, and then you then take this into account, you think, was it a hoaxed death? Were they trying to make Jo Cox disappear because she was in danger because of a link with the Panama Papers, perhaps? So I've not been able to find sufficient evidence to show that a death occurred. If you were going to ask me to place a bet, I would bet that she's still alive. But I wouldn't say that strongly. I don't know whether she's alive or not. So can the UK Parliament ever expose a fabricated terrorist incident? I did try in 2012 to bring attention to MPs of the London bombings, which itself was a fabricated event. I'm not saying that no deaths occurred. Deaths definitely occurred in the London bombings, but they were not carried out by the 4 guys that it was blamed on. So I managed to get responses from all of these MPs on the London bombing evidence, and it was clear from some of them that they were sympathetic to the information. I've got no doubt that there are MPs who know what's going on. They know that there's fabricated terrorism going on, but they will not speak about it. As I said earlier, they would be kicked out of their party. Michael Meacher was one example of an MP who did mention or ask questions about 9/11 in Parliament. Now this is my own MP, Gerald Jones, who I mentioned in the intro there, and I went to see him last summer after I gave my lecture. So I gave him a copy of the lecture, the Jo Cox evidence, and I said, I want a proper reply from you. I don't want you to fob me off. So he wrote me a letter, and in it he states, I have read the information you have sent and watched the DVD you left with me. Given the nature of the matter you raised, you may wish to consider contacting the Criminal Cases Review Commission. Now that's quite a good reply. I was quite pleased with that. He wasn't debunking the evidence, he wasn't trying to fob me off, and he was advising me. So that means he's treating the information in the film seriously, and he believes it has merit. So I wrote to the Criminal Cases Review Commission. Now they knocked my letter back because they said, well, Tommy Mayer has to apply himself. You can't apply on his behalf. The problem we've got with that is that they're not allowing any correspondence to and from Tommy Mayer in prison. And there are other people who have been trying to contact Tommy Mayer who've also not got letters back. One guy put a Freedom of Information request in, and he was told that the letters that he'd been sending to Tommy were being put in Tommy's property box. So this is a box, when you go to prison, they take everything off you and put it in a box, and they give you that box back when you get out of prison after your sentence has been served. So they're putting the letter in that box, and he's serving a life sentence. So he's not going to get the letter, is he? So what I did, I rebadged the cover of my Joe Cox film, a slightly more serious cover, in order to send to MPs. It's the exact same film with a different title and a different cover. I've called it the Joe Cox Murder, an Independent Investigation. And I sent this film to every single MP in January this year. So I got 700 DVDs made, and I managed to establish all of the constituency office addresses for every single MP. So it cost me about £1,100 to do this. Thank you. Thanks. So this is my hallway with the 650 DVDs ready to go to MPs. And I deliberately sent them to their constituency offices because there would be less chance of them being intercepted. If I sent all of this to Westminster, then there's a higher chance of them being intercepted. So they went to all corners of the United Kingdom, 650. So every one of these has got a copy of that film. And in the covering letter I wrote, I am the producer of a new investigative film about the assassination of your colleague Joe Cox. Please find enclosed a DVD disc containing a copy of the film. Our production explores the tragic event in detail and highlights serious questions about the circumstances of the murder which you should know about. Now, those DVDs would have been received around the 28th or 29th of January. And I'm convinced that after they landed, a Brexit victim-playing PSYOP was triggered or ramped up. I think it was going on a little bit before then. Because after I sent these DVDs, I was monitoring news stories on the internet and also Parliament channel very closely to see if there was any reaction. And I'm going to go through a timeline from the 28th of January to the present day, just to show you everything that's happened since every MP got a copy of my film. So this is Tracy Brabin. Now, she replaced Joe Cox as the MP for Batley. She walked into the seat unchallenged. Nobody stood against her. She's a former Coronation Street actress. Now, I've written to her a few times, and in one of the letters I explained that she's got corrupt police officers, Wallen and Cass, operating in West Yorkshire, who were running a corrupt operation, right, framing Tommy Mayer. So it's all explained in the letter to her. She's not written back to me. Ask yourself, right, why would they want to put an actress in Joe Cox's place? You see her sitting in Parliament grinning her head off, right, as if nothing's bothering her. And I know the letters that I've written to her. She's got a copy of that film, right? So have they put an actress in that constituency because she actually knows the truth and she knows she's got to pretend that she doesn't know? Are you with me? So there was a chap in the constituency who had my film and wanted to go and see her at her surgery on the 31st of January, and she cancels that constituency surgery. On the 3rd of February, at that time, the main story in the media was all about Venezuela. You may remember it. And this was in all of the press. They managed to shoehorn Joe Cox into this Venezuela story. Joe Cox has got nothing to do with the Venezuela issue, right? What they did, they picked up a tweet that Brendan had made on his Twitter page so that they could then put him in and therefore put Joe Cox in and then remind all of these MPs and everyone else the official narrative of Jo Cox. So the stories that I'm going to show you now of other female MPs who are supposedly being threatened by far-right extremists, right? What I think is going on here is they're trying to convince people that that is happening, that there's all these far-right extremists out there who are threatening pro-Remain MPs, right? In order that you accept the Jo Cox narrative, because they're worried about the film. So on the 5th of February, I get a letter from the Speaker of the House, John Bercow, and it said that he is looking forward to watching it in due course. Now, if you've been watching these debates, he's been a central figure in the Brexit debates in Parliament. On the 5th of February, man arrested for making death threats against Labour MP. But the death threat was made in 2016. This is the 5th of February 2019. They're talking about a crime that happened nearly 3 years earlier. Here is a news article covering that. Yvette Cooper alerts police over death threat tweet. So here's the tweet. It says, "Hello Yvette, I have received your stronger in propaganda emails 5 times. Please stop or I will kill your kids and grandkids." So that's it there. Not very pleasant, but the point is it was in 2016, nearly 3 years earlier, and they've just gone along to arrest the guy now. Really. So this is where the guy lives who made that tweet, in a place called Castleford. This is where the Jo Cox operation happened, ran by DI Nick Wallen, who works at Yorkshire Police Headquarters, West Yorkshire Police Headquarters. So he's just here. So it looks to me like the team who were running the Jo Cox operation just dipped into their files, found someone who had made a threatening tweet to a Labour MP just so that they can generate this headline. So they're putting similar stories to the Jo Cox narrative in the media to get people to buy into it. So I then get an email on the 6th of February from 10 Downing Street, which said that your correspondence is receiving attention. I was in the park when I got that email. I came up on my phone. It said 10 Downing Street, your correspondence is receiving attention. And I had visions of me in my mind of Theresa May sitting there with a laptop and a cup of coffee, just sitting watching the Jo Cox film. But somehow I doubt that happened. It might have happened. I have had a few letters of confirmation from MPs, but other than my own MP, I haven't had anyone admitting that they've even watched it. So, as I said, my own MP is called Gerald Jones, and on the 8th of February, I walked into my local pub called the Iron Dragon in Merthyr Tydfil. And this is Gerald here, and this is his partner and parliamentary secretary, Tyrone Powell. And they live together. So Tyrone Powell is standing in this pub. He's pissed as a fart, right? He's wearing a bright pink jumper. So I go up to him, and he recognised me, because I've been to see them a couple of times. I said, "Oh, have you watched the film?" He said, yes. He said, "Me and Gerald watched it on our sofa the other night in our pants." We like to sit and watch television together in our underpants. And then he said to me, "Are you gay?" Right? And then he said, "It would have been good to have you there with us so that we could pause it and ask you questions." And I thought, would that be in the middle between you and Gerald, with or without the pants? Note the shitty blue fleece. But joking aside, he's watched it, so credit to him, right? And he's written me that letter, right? I'm not expecting him to stand up in Parliament and mention it, right? He'd probably be kicked out of his party. But perhaps what we can do is persuade him to talk to other MPs, to get a group of them together, perhaps. So this is an email I received from a Richplanet viewer on the day after, the 9th of February. So this guy was trying to take my film to his MP, and his MP cancelled 2 weeks in a row. Here's another confirmation letter. So the 16th of February, we've got Harriet Harman popping up in these articles, and again, the obligatory picture of Jo Cox. Labour MP had swastikas daubed on her office door, as Harriet Harman claims female politicians have had to move house and hire bodyguards after Brexit vote. So Dewsbury this is, which is next door to Jo Cox's constituency. Again, we've got Harriet Harman. Brexit death threats forcing MPs to hire bodyguards and move home. Picture of Anna Soberry here. Now, this incident where there was some guy protesting to Anna Soberry in the street, there's a video shot slightly later where this protester, he hands something to one of Anna Soberry's employees. So to me, it just looked like a psyop to generate this headline. I think Harriet Harman is important in this because she's the one I think that they're handing this hot potato to, right? Because she's chair of the Joint Committee on Human Rights, and they are going to discuss this whole issue of MPs receiving threats. 18th of February, children as young as 13 joining satanic Nazi groups, report warns. Yvette Cooper, man who made threats, given caution. 20th of February, neo-Nazi terror group National Action was on the rise from spreading racist and hate-filled propaganda before it was banned for supporting the murder of MP Joe Cox. Court hears. Bear in mind, before I've given my DVDs to these MPs, Joe Cox is not appearing in the media every day, right? Now, National Action, one of their members recently was charged with allegedly planning to murder an MP. But the person in National Action who snitched on him didn't call the police. If you know someone is planning to murder someone, you're going to call the police. No, he called or contacted Hope Not Hate. Now, if you follow the work of Dr. Larry O'Hara, you will realise that Hope Not Hate is just an MI5 front. So that tells me that MI5 probably knew that someone was planning to allegedly murder an MP. And again, if you follow the work of Dr. Larry O'Hara, you'll realise that MI5 have been involved in setting up or infiltrating or controlling so-called far-right groups for decades. It's what they do. Terrorist cops arrest man suspected of extreme right-wing activity. What does that mean? And then on questionable time, on the 28th of February, my film gets an airing with this MP, Barry Gardiner.
You say that this is on the left. This is a letter I received this morning. Okay, hey Barry Gardiner MP.
Now, that letter that he's reading there, right, I'd like to see who it's from because I suspect Barry Gardiner's written that letter, right? And he's written it in order to confuse it with my letter. That's my opinion.
Reference your recent parliamentary diatribe, Barry idolising your equally obnoxious Zionist girlfriend, Luciana Berger. Okay, this is one of the racist, extremist letters that I have received from the right of British politics today.
That's not new. I mean, I said this was culturally interesting.
Right, that's my letter there, which he doesn't read.
Again, in my inbox this morning, right, I received the Joe Cox murder, trying to pretend that she was not, this is a former colleague of mine, trying to pretend that she was not murdered by the man who is now in prison for her murder. I'm sorry, that is the sort of racist, awful abuse that we're getting, and yes, there is some on the extreme left, but please don't be under any illusions, it's on the right wing of politics just as much.
Well, I'll get me blue fleece, should I? I'm off. I'm a racist. So I wrote to him, challenging him to a debate on the evidence of the Joe Cox case. He didn't write back. What I think's going on there, right, is they're extremely worried that MPs are starting to see this DVD. And this is a message to other MPs, in my opinion. Because if there's one programme that every MP watches, it's Question Time. So it's a good vehicle to speak to every MP. What I think the message that they're trying to put out with this is, if you're an MP and you've had this disc, don't bother watching it because it's some racist, extremist nonsense, yeah? So that's my opinion as to why they did this. And he was probably instructed to do that on national television. So the 1st of March, the Yorkshire Post says abuse of MPs must never become a national pastime after Joe Cox murder. 2nd of March, 2.5 years on from Joe Cox's death, Batley is determined not to be divided by the Brexit effect. Again, the Yorkshire Post says security and safety of our MPs must come first, with no excuses for threats of violence. Then on the 4th of March, John Bercow, who's not supposed to give lengthy speeches in Parliament, makes this speech all about the issue. An attack on one MP is an attack on all, and I won't stand for death of democracy. This was kind of a little plug, a little advert for the programme that ITV aired on the 4th of March called Brexit Online Uncovered. Exposure talks to MPs and lords who have experienced a barrage of menacing messages and death threats on social media. Really. Now, the thing that stuck out in my mind about this documentary was the fact that they did not mention the death threat made to Stephen Kinnock 10 days after Joe Cox's apparent murder. Why, oh why? Because that guy got, I think, 8 weeks in prison. He's called Gareth Bamsey. He claims that he still works for the government. On his Facebook page, he's worked for 4 different regiments in the British Army, right? And I suspect, and all of the reasoning is given in the film, although I do not know, I suspect Bamsey was involved in the Joe Cox operation, possibly even the perpetrator, right? So that would explain why they've left this death threat out of their documentary, because it's got sensitive information in it. And they didn't, this story wasn't put into the media for, I think, 9 or 10 months after it happened. So it was probably denoticed at the time. So Harriet Harman then writes an article in The House, which is Parliament's magazine, on the 5th of March, where she talks about Joe Cox. Joe Cox was murdered less than 3 years ago, blah, blah, blah. Now, Harriet Harman has a copy of the film. So what I think is going on here is Harriet Harman, we see it here, the committee interview MPs to determine the scale of threats and abuse. So it's now official. It's officially in Parliament. And Harriet Harman is going to reside over this issue as the chair of the Joint Committee on Human Rights. So I think it's possible that MPs may have written to the government about my film in private, right? And I suspect that they're using Harriet Harman as the person to pass that off to. Oh, it's all right, no problem. Harriet Harman's going to get her committee to look at that issue, yeah? So they've got somewhere to send these MPs to. That's just my guess. Now, this committee is made up of half Lords and half MPs. So the MPs have already got the film, so I found out which Lords are on this committee, and they've all got a copy of the film as well, which includes Stephen Lawrence's mother. I've written to her. I've written to Harriet Harman. I've also submitted my own evidence to this Joint Committee on Human Rights, telling them that not to accept the verdict of the Joe Cox, of the Tommy Mair trial, because it's unsafe. And I've also said to them, I'm happy to appear at their inquiry and answer any questions about my research into Joe Cox. So I haven't heard from them yet, but if I do get to appear in front of this panel, it'll make a great Richplanet special. Hopefully. So these stories continued. The 8th of March. Diane Abbott fears she will be raped or murdered by trolls and extremists and is convinced that a fanatic like Joe Cox's killer has a room full of her pictures in a sexy dress. Diane Abbott feared death and rape threats could come true after Joe Cox's murder. This is a story about what Diane Abbott imagines, or says she imagines. Now then, I listed these terror attacks earlier, and I just want to point a few things out. If we go back in time to 9/11 and work our way forward, at that time, clearly people died in 9/11, and then we go to 2005, the London bombings. People died in those London tube bombings, no doubt about that. 56 died. I consider the Cumbria shootings as a terrorist incident, or a fabricated terrorist incident. Yes, people definitely died then. Now, as we approach 2012, 2013, it all gets a bit different, right? This is when I believe the hoaxing started. So we had Sandy Hook was at the end of 2012, and as I showed you earlier, the Boston bombing was in 2013. So they are cases where it looks like deaths were being fabricated. So I think there was a change of modus operandi around that time from real deaths to fabricated deaths. But I think they've changed their modus operandi again, and I'm just going to point it out. So this film, which I can't overstate the importance of this film, came out in 2016, right? And it revealed what happened in this fabricated terrorist incident. So if you take that time, 2016, and look at the UK terror attacks from that point. Okay, we've got the Joe Cox attack in 2016. The Westminster attack in 2017, that took place on a bridge. Now, if you're going to find a place in London that isn't overlooked by buildings, a bridge is the only place, is it not? You've got nobody overlooking that, so nobody would be able to take photographs, right? We then look at the next UK attack, the 2017 Manchester Arena bombing. I'm going to come on to that in a minute. But that was done indoors. Not only that, it was done in an area which was being controlled before the quote-unquote bomb went off. So again, very little public visibility. 2017, we got another bridge. And it was at night, yeah? Finsbury Park, that was at night. So I think from 2016 onwards, they have taken care to make sure that there's no witnesses, because everyone has a mobile phone in their pocket these days, right? So I think around about 2012, 2013, we're seeing more fabricated deaths, and I think we're still having that now, but they're being very careful not to allow people to gather their own evidence from these fabricated terrorist incidents. So let's come on to this Manchester attack. Now, if you Google that word there, or UK critical thinker, you will find a YouTube channel. Now, this chap is from Manchester originally, and he's made dozens of videos analysing a lot of the injured and witnesses from the Manchester Arena bombing. And please do go and watch it. Now, I considered his exposés and his analysis to be the best online. So I arranged to meet him. I met with him last year. We spent a day together, and he gave me an SD card with all of his research on it, right? It was really good of him to do that. And I wanted to meet him because he is anonymous online. He doesn't like to put his name out because he doesn't want the grief from people who think that it was a real event, all right? But I met with him, and I sat aside myself. He's a genuine researcher with genuine motives, and he was good enough to give me all of his research. So a lot of what I'm going to present now in the second part of part one is from UK critical thinkers' work. So here is the Manchester Arena. So this is May 2017. We've got a stadium here which holds just over 20,000 people. We've got a large train station and a building which joins onto the train station and joins onto the arena. This is the foyer. This is the arena foyer. Now, this roof here on the train station is made of ETFE panels, and it looks opaque, but it's not. It's 85% transparent, so these do act as windows. You can see through them. So if we look inside the train station, this is what we see. Here's the roof with the ETFE panels, and you can see through them here. So we've got trains arriving on the platform. If you were to go to a concert at the arena, you would arrive by train, you walk up 2 flights of stairs, across a bridge, and then through some glass doors and into the foyer. And it's inside the foyer where the bomb is alleged to have gone off. So here's a view from the other side of the train platform. We see the bridge here, and we see the glass doors are just there. There's also a skylight which lets in daylight through these panels into the foyer. Okay, so this is a close-up of the glass doors which go into the foyer from the train station, and this is taken the day after the bombing. And we can see clearly here that none of the glass was out on those doors. Still got the stickers in place. So this is forensics people looking at the scene. So they're not going to have replaced those windows just yet. Right, this is the foyer itself where people will gather to buy merchandise before they go through these double doors to the concert. So if you go through one of these double doors here, you arrive at a concourse which goes all the way around the arena, and you go through more doors to get to your seat. So if we come back into the foyer, here's a photograph taken at night of the foyer, and we see a merchandise stall here. And there was a merchandise stall at the Ariana Grande concert in May 2017. If you were standing in this crowd here and you look towards the camera, you'd see this view. So you see 2 sets of stairs which lead into car parks, and a set of glass doors which goes through a tunnel. There used to be a McDonald's restaurant in this foyer area, but it's not there now, and it was shut down 3 months before the attack. So does that suggest foreknowledge? This glass door here is the door going into the Victoria train station, which I showed you earlier. So here is a plan view of the foyer. We see the two sets of steps that are highlighted, the merchandise stall, the doors going into the concourse, and the exit through glass doors into the Victoria train station. So this is the estimated location of the bang. I'm calling it a bang, not a bomb. You'll see why in a minute. All right. Here's the alleged perpetrator. Interesting that we've not had any images of the perpetrator in the foyer or in the train station showing background that he was there. Right. So there's nothing to prove he was there. They've just given us an image with the background blacked out, which is very suspicious, I think you'll agree. There's cameras all over the place in both the train station and in the foyer, but there's no image of him being produced showing him in the train station or the foyer. So he's alleged to have gone up in a lift. There's a couple of flights of steps, but there's also a lift which leads you to here. He's walked across the bridge. He's allegedly walked through the glass doors from the train station, and round about here, he's supposedly set his device off and blown himself up and allegedly killed 22 people and injured lots of others. Now, it's evident that this foyer area was being controlled and managed before the sound of the bang. So here are a couple of witnesses. These were witnesses who were in the Manchester Arena, and they were going to exit via these double doors, via these exits. So this is a normal exit that would be used at the concert. There are other exits, but this is one of the exits that would always be used by people coming out from a concert, right? So people who were trying to exit via here, they were prevented before the bomb went off.
And so we did. We went to the bathroom, and then we said, let's go now before the rush. So we walked towards where the MEN car park is, where we were parked, and there was a row of stewards stood in a line, stopping us getting through, but they were very friendly, and they said, this isn't your best way, girls. You're best turning round, and you can get to your car park that way. As I turn round, boom, one loud noise.
We was waiting to be let out to walk down to the foyer area, and while we was waiting, no one would let us past, and all of a sudden we had like a massive explosion, and it went quiet, and then everyone just started screaming and running.
All right, so show sec staff was stopping people coming through these doors. So the effect that would have had would be to clear this area. I suspect they were doing the same on the other side of the doors, just to prepare this area for what was to happen. And as I say, this is the estimated location of the bang, and people ran up these steps and also ran into the Victoria train station after it happened. So the ones who ran into the train station would have ran across this bridge and down the steps, and then they were captured on a camera phone at the bottom of the steps. This video was played several times in mainstream media. You may remember it. So you've got panicking people running down these steps who've ran from the foyer shortly after the blast. Now I'm going to look at video and photographic evidence of the foyer area shortly after it happened. Now to my knowledge, there are only 3 pieces of video or photographic evidence that have been made available, and I'm going to go through each of them. The first is a 43-second camera phone video uploaded by a guy called John Barr to Facebook. It's, as I say, it's 43 seconds long. So what I've done here, I've taken some snapshots from his video and I've just made a composite, because what he does, he starts at this side of the room and he pans across. So I've just made a composite image there. I'm going to show you the video in a minute. This is a single still frame, which is from a camera phone, which was given to the Press Association, and it was put onto their website. This is probably the one that most people are familiar with. Then there is a 12-second video, and again I've made a composite because whoever's filming it pans across the room, and this was shown in the BBC's documentary about the Manchester bombing. We don't know who filmed it, right? Now, these 3 images, they're taken from different angles, right? But you can pick out the same people in all of them. So for example, there's a guy in a blue t-shirt here with a bald head and white shoes. You see him here, and you also see him here. This drag mark here, you can actually make it out in that image as well when you watch the video. And you can pick out all of the different casualties and responders and match them up, right? The point I'm making is they are all of the same event. This video, and this photograph. So I'm going to take the photograph first. Here it is. So UK Critical Thinker, he got a hold of this photograph from the website, from the media website, and he submitted it to a photo forensics website. Now, when you take a photograph, say with your mobile phone, there's a whole load of data gets stored with the image. This is called EXIF data. So it includes the date and time that you've made the photograph, the size of the image, various other data. That's always stored. So your phone, it takes the time from your phone and stores that in the file. So this is the EXIF data from that particular photograph. And we see here it states software. So somebody has loaded the image into Adobe Photoshop and they've added a caption. So the caption states, help us attend to injured people inside the Manchester Arena, Manchester, Britain, after a blast Monday, May 22nd, 2017. So that's a very American way of saying it, and it's also an American media website, right? So that's been done by someone in America. Now we note the date and time that the image was created. This is GBR time. The date is the 22nd of the 5th, 2017, which is correct. The photograph was taken at 11 minutes past 7 in the morning. The Ariana Grande bomb is alleged to have gone off at 10:30 at night. So how can that be? This image is taken at 10 past 7 in the morning. And we see it again here, 10 past 7 in the morning. Now, you may recall last week the clocks went forward. And if you've got a mobile phone, it probably put the clock forward itself. That's because mobile phones get their time from the network. Mobile phones now are very, very accurate. It's very unusual to pick up a mobile phone and for it to have the wrong time on it. Now, this is the website that it was uploaded to. This screenshot was taken by UK Critical Thinker on the 19th of June 2018. And one of the fields in the database, we see it here, is the creation date, which states May the 22nd, 2017 at 4 a.m. in the morning, right? Now, this is an American website, and I believe this organization is 8 hours behind UK time. So if we add on 8 hours to 4 a.m. in the morning, we get 12 noon, right? So this entry here is also suggesting that that photograph was taken in the morning on the 22nd of May. So this is a second piece of forensic evidence, because this is separate from the EXIF data. It's a separate piece of forensic evidence suggesting the image was taken in the morning, not at night, right? I'm not exactly sure how this is created. It may be created automatically when the image is uploaded. It might be entered by the person uploading it. But it is showing that it was uploaded around about noon that day before the attack is alleged to have occurred. Now, UK Critical Thinker was really excited by discovering this, so he started talking on Facebook to people about it. And very shortly after that, it changed. So it had been like that for a year, 4 a.m. So 3 p.m. it changed to. So if you add 8 hours onto that, you get 11 p.m., which fits with the official narrative. But we've got the original screenshot. Now, just have a look at this. I'm going to show you the video in a minute, but just have a look at the still first. I'm going to zoom into part of it. What does that look like to everyone coming in here? Daylight. That looks like a daylight shadow from early morning sun. Now, also, this glass door here, we've got a very bright light there on the other side. If you look at the other side of that glass door, so that glass door would be about here, all right? There's no wide lights that would cast that sort of light on the door. But if you look straight directly opposite, you come to these ETFE panels that I mentioned before, yeah, which would let daylight through. Now, there's a canopy over this set of glass doors, and then you've got glass here. So I think what we're looking at there, I think that's the canopy, and there's light coming through the ETFE panel on the other side of the train platform, right? Daylight. That's the third piece of forensic evidence suggesting that what was going on here was happening in the morning. It's 7:10. I've done a little impression here. This is what I would expect that door to look like if this was happening at 10:30 at night. It wouldn't look like that in my opinion. And it also seems that they were possibly trying to control the light in this area. We've actually got a grey coloured cover over that window and I think that window. Here are some images taken at daytime and nighttime previous to the attack. We see that they usually have these ceiling lights on. They're turned off on the actual night of the Ariana Grande concert. So were they trying to reduce the amount of light in that room? And as I say, we can see covers on some of the windows. This is an image taken a few years before, and we see that these are indeed windows and they go all the way down to the floor. So we've got a window up to about a height of 7 foot and one maybe 12 foot. But what they did, they've replaced this canopy with an advert for, it's called Prime. I think it's for VIP tickets. But we've also got the same logo, Prime, covering these windows. So all of this window section here is being used for this advert, but not on the night of the actual attack. On the night of the actual attack, they've removed this Prime signage. You see it's not there and it's not there. And to me, this is the still image and this is the video I'm going to show you in a minute. Behind this person's head, this section of window, to me, looks different to that. It looks like a different colour. So has this been photoshopped because it was showing daylight peeping through? I suspect these two windows are covered with a black covering preventing daylight coming through. Now, it's stated in the mainstream media that the big glass skylight, which is above where the bang happened, was shattered, right? UK critical thinker was sceptical of that claim, so he got somebody to fly a drone over the arena. This was about 2 weeks after the attack. So this is from the drone footage. This is the skylight that mainstream said was smashed with the bomb. Here's the train station. So we'll just give you some stills from the drone footage. Now this bottom image is an image that I got from Google Earth, a recent Google Earth image, just to show you what this glass looks like. And this is a few weeks after the attack. Now, it looks to me from those images like there's some covering or screen inside this skylight. It doesn't look like that. So has this window been covered in order to prevent any daylight coming through? But we see it's intact. They wouldn't have had time to replace all that glass. It was not broken. Okay, so let's show you these videos then. Let's go for the John Barr one first. So this is 43 seconds. I'm going to show you it without the sound first, because we're not sure if the sound is correct. So this woman, although she hasn't blood on her leg, appears to be walking normally. Look how casual the witnesses are, or the first responders. But like I say, this is at 7 in the morning. Let's play it with the sound now.
Public safety announcement. Due to an incident, it is necessary to evacuate the area.
Look at the merchandise stall, hasn't even moved.
By the nearest exit.
It does look like they've exploded some, maybe a plastic bag or some device, just for the effect.
Public safety announcement. Due to an incident, it is necessary to evacuate the area. Please leave
go and get your guys, go and get them.
By the nearest exit.
Need some help, yeah.
Right, let's have a look at the 12-second one from BBC. We don't know who this came from.
Attention, due to an incident, it is necessary to evacuate the area. Please leave the building immediately by the nearest exit.
Now, look away if you don't want to see a picture of what a real bomb does. So this is from the Birmingham bombing of 1974. Look at how much damage has been caused to the building, and look at those corpses. Not a pretty sight. Look at the lack of damage to the foyer. This is where the bomb's supposed to have gone off, where I've put the red dot there, right? Look at the merchandise stall. We're meant to have people who are dead around here, but the merchandise stall just looks like it's completely untouched, still with T-shirts on it. In The Guardian, they stated, when the device was detonated, it was so powerful, it caused a crater in the arena's concrete floor, and a 23 square metre glass skylight shattered. Complete lies. Again, look away if you don't want to see a graphic image. This is what a real bomb does, right? So in the Manchester Arena bombing, this is what's supposed to have happened to the suicide bomber, that his torso came off and someone's supposed to have moved it, right? This is what we should have seen, right? So that's what a real bomb does. That's a training exercise. This woman is on her phone here, right? There's no casualty in that image where you could say, well, where you can see an injury that looks like somebody's died. Every one of those casualties could just be somebody lying down taking part in an exercise. Now this is, I believe, a woman called Ruth Morell, and you saw her walk past the camera there in that shot with this big blood stain on her jeans. Now, during the event that happened at 10:30, some of the casualties were sitting around outside being attended to. And here's a photograph from the Sun website, and we see what looks like Ruth Morell in this image. Same platform shoes, the same coloured jeans, the same blouse, right? And the same stain on her leg. This is at 10:30, all right, this image, okay? Now let's just have a little look at that stain and compare it to the stain that we saw on the image that we believe is taken at 7 o'clock in the morning, right? This is considerably lighter, is it not? So, in my opinion, what's happened here, this is at 7 in the morning where she's made this fake blood stain, and she's just put the same crisis actor pants back on 15 hours later, and the stain's dried out a bit. So that's a fourth piece of evidence suggesting that this was taken considerably earlier, 15 hours earlier. This is Ruth Morell, the woman that you just saw, okay, meeting the Queen 3 days later. Note the shitty blue fleece. This is what she said to the Queen, and you can find this video. This is 3 days after she's seen walking perfectly normally across the camera. I had one of those wounds as well, shrapnel wounds. So I think it's nuts and bolts that everybody's suffered with. And mine's gone through 15 centimetres and out the other side, and then she starts to laugh. So I'm due in surgery later on this afternoon, feeling okay about it, okay? This is Ruth Morell on the left with Andy Burnham. So why do that? Why put out images that they took in the morning? Well, I can give you a suggestion. I think what they were doing here is they were having a final practice, or a practice for what they were going to do in the evening. They wanted, so I think something similar would have been concocted on the night. But you would have possible members of the public in the area. So there would be members of the public possibly looking through these doors, or it's possible that a member of the public could get a photograph or what have you. So I think that they wanted their own controlled images to check them before they put them out. So they weren't happy actually producing images from the event because they weren't in control of it as they were in this training exercise. So I do believe on the evening it was a training exercise as well. I don't believe anyone was killed or hurt, but I believe they were practicing here for what they did in the evening. And they practiced a year earlier as well at the Trafford Centre with a very similar set of circumstances. Okay, so what about the people who claim to have been injured or hurt or even killed? Well, let's take a look at some of them. A lot of them are alleged to have run out these double doors, and here they are. Now, all of these people on the screen were in the foyer when the bomb is alleged to have gone off, or like went in shortly afterwards. If you go to UK Critical Thinkers YouTube channel, he deconstructs many of the interviews that these people have taken part in, right? And please go and watch them, because after you've watched them, you will realize that they are all just crisis actors, all right? Let's look at one or two of them. This is Amy Barlow and her mother. So their story is that they were in the foyer when the bomb went off, and they ran this way. So the daughter is alleged to have been wounded. They've exited via the glass doors to Victoria train station. So they've ran across this bridge, down 2 sets of steps, and then they've ran out. This is them here. So that's the mother, and this is Amy Barlow. They're caught again on another camera coming out the entrance of the train station. This is the mother, this is Amy Barlow. And then they're caught on a third camera piece of footage walking adjacent to the train station. So I'm going to show you the video of them running down the stairs. I'm just going to show you those two in slow motion. And Amy Barlow looks like she's carrying something in her right hand. Step, 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 step. So she's running down the stairs, and you can see her feet. There's a mother, there's Amy Barlow's feet here. There is another clip shortly after that clip. I'm just going to fast forward this. Here she is here, walking. There. There's no blood dripping from her legs, and it looks like she's not injured. So here she is, 3 days after walking out of the Manchester Arena, where we see her walking okay, without any blood. 3 days later, she's in hospital and is visited by the Queen.
Tell us a bit about what's happened to you. Your legs, is it?
Someone shot me.
You were shot on the leg.
Very well.
Very good. Very wonderful.
Right. Then, sometime after she walks out the train station, she sits on a wall and both her legs start to bleed. Now this guy, Nick Bickerstaff, you can find this video online, I'm not going to play it. He's walking around the concourse with his mobile phone, filming himself looking for his daughter. And he says words to the effect, people don't realise what's happened, there's people being blown in two over there. So he's clearly been given a narrative of a bomb. But if you analyse this video, it's shot before the concert, right? Nobody's trying to leave the concert or panicking or anything. Everyone's just walking around normally, finding their seats, right? So another crisis actor. And I could stand here and do that with all of these people here. But if you want to study it further, go to UK Critical Thinkers YouTube channel and you'll find all of these people analysed. One of Peter Hyatt's students has been helping me with statement analysis. And she looked at some of the statements and she states, having looked at 4 of the testimonies of the Manchester witnesses who claim to have been in the foyer at the time of the explosion, It is my opinion that these witnesses are not telling the truth. I have found indicators of sensitivity within their language, and they don't use the expected language that you would find from people who had been caught up in a real bomb attack. The emotions are not right. It seems to me that they have been given a basic story to work from, and their words are coming from the story and not experiential memory. So this is a very similar conclusion to what UK Critical Thinker makes in his videos, that they have been given things to say and a story, but they've been given the same story. So you find that the witnesses, they just come out with the same thing, and their stories don't actually lock together. All right, so we can ask the question, how could they rope so many people in to lie and take part in such an event? Well, I think probably the biggest motivating factor, apart from signing a contract, right, is the money that they've received. So I wrote to the fund, and this is an email that I received back from them telling me how much money had been dished out. So in total, according to them, 20.6 million has been dished out to the survivors and the families of the bereaved. Apparently, well, they claim that there were 176 people who sustained physical injuries and 368 who were psychologically injured, and of course, 22 people tragically lost their lives. Why do they need to say of course? So if you do the maths, 20.6 million was distributed, 40% was gifted to bereaved families. That works out at an average of £374,000 per family. I have heard higher figures of £500,000 for the bereaved families and £44,000 for anyone who was physically injured on average, if you do the maths. But again, I've heard higher figures such as 60,000 for anyone who was physically injured and also psychologically injured. I think anyone who was in the foyer got an immediate £10,000. So they've been given a lot of money, and some of them have set up their own funding channels and got more money. Now, you might recall that I was putting out appeals for witnesses to come forward to Richplanet, right? I wasn't really interested in witnesses from the arena itself because they didn't see what happened in the foyer. I was interested in foyer witnesses, first-hand witnesses, not someone who knew someone whose next-door neighbour was there. They need to be first-hand witnesses, right? And I didn't receive contact from any first-hand witness until late last year, right? So I was emailed by a woman who I immediately rang, who said that her husband ran into the foyer just after the bomb went off, and he was prepared to speak to me and be interviewed by me, right? So I thought, great. So I got their contact details, I got in my van, and I drove a long way, because they live a long way from where I live, to go and see them. So I went to their house, and I put the recorder on the desk. They let me record it, so I've got a recording of it, and the couple sat opposite me, right? Now, and the interview lasted for over an hour. So what their story was that the two of them with 4 adolescent girls went to the concert, and they had a drink in this bar here, and then the 4 girls and the mother went up these steps, took their seats in the concert and watched the concert. The father then went off somewhere else. He didn't want to go to the concert. Don't blame him. Right? So he then comes back to meet them at the bottom of these steps, and he said he was stopped from going up the steps, which I find interesting. Were there SureSec staff who were trying to clear the foyer area to anyone who is, you know, not part of the exercise? Anyway, he was talking to a couple, he said, at the bottom of the steps. Then he heard the blast, and his story is that he ran up the stairs against the crowd that were coming down, and he went through the glass doors, and the first casualty he saw was a man who was stuck in the glass door. So he pulled his leg out the glass door, put a tourniquet on there for him, right? And then he saw a woman who was struggling with her mobile phone and helped her. He then witnessed some of the teenage girls who were dying, so he described a few of them. Now, when I was listening to him, I wasn't convinced by him. I just, you know, when you get a feeling that you're not believing what they're telling you. And then, considering this evidence, this is the day after, right? These glass doors were not shattered, right? So how could he have pulled someone who's got their leg caught in this glass, right? So what I did, I got the whole interview and I sent it to one of Peter Hyatt's students, statement analyst, right? And her conclusion was that yes, the whole family went to the concert, that the girls went up and watched the concert with the mother, but that he did not go up the steps, right? Her conclusion was that he rang her at the bottom of the steps and went to meet the family outside the arena and then went back to their hotel. And that the reason why they fabricated this is just so they can claim the money. Because the story is that he went into the foyer and helped various casualties, then met his family outside the arena, went back to his hotel and then just went home and didn't contact anyone for 10 months, right? Would you do that? So when they heard about the compensation payments, that's when they've contacted the arena. So the conclusion of the analysis was that the couple, both of them, had fabricated him being in the foyer so they could get the money. Now, why they've then come to me to spin that yarn, I don't know. So what I did was I emailed her when I got the results of the analysis. And I said, I've had your words studied by a statement analyst, and her conclusion is that you've lied. You weren't in the foyer, or he was not in the foyer. And the reason why you've done it is to collect the money. And I didn't hear a word back from her. Probably she doesn't want her email analysed. So what it seems like to me is that this money is creating new fake witnesses, which is propping up the official narrative, because there was so much stuff in his statements that you can find in the media, right? It was like a mirror image of some of the other stories. But what about the dead people? I've looked at these 22 dead people, and I've looked at their family dynamics and their backgrounds, what their parents or they do for a living, and that kind of thing. Has anyone done any research into any of these people who allegedly died? If anyone has, I'd like to hear from you. Well, a lot of them are from broken families where they've got stepfathers and stepmothers and that kind of thing, which makes it interesting. Now, having looked at them, I wouldn't say in great detail, but I've looked at every one of them and I've tried to find out as much as I can about them online. It's possible to come up with a hypothesis as to how they faked each of these deaths, right? And I have found that, in my mind, they fit into 4 or 5 different categories, right? So this is just a hypothesis at the moment, right? I'm not saying this is true, but from the information I've been able to gather so far, this is how I think they would have faked these deaths. The different categories, right? The first is the pre-vacated victim. So this is somebody who used to live in a particular place, perhaps with a partner, who at some point left there, either died or emigrated, and they've used that person's identity to say they died when they weren't actually living there, right? So the person, they're using an old or historic identity to create the death. The next category is the greedy parents and apprentice daughter victim. So this is a family where the daughter is approaching school leaving age and they are an aspiring whatever actor or physicist, whatever, aspiring in some field. The daughter's been sent to some prestigious place to be educated, perhaps in another country, and the parents have been given £500,000 to keep their mouth shut. They're possibly still in touch on Skype. The third category is the foster or surrogate child victim. So this would be a family where we've been given a narrative about the family, right, but the child is actually a foster or surrogate child, and the child who they've claimed has died has gone to another family, perhaps in another country. Then there's the no ties victim. So this would be someone who is a young adult who's never been married and got no children, and who was quite happy to have their identity changed, go and live in another country for £500,000. And then there's the two adults setup victim. So this would be where, because there was a few instances where you've got a person at the concert, they've gone to pick up their children or child, right? And that person has persuaded someone else to come along with them and wait in the foyer with them, right? Even though that person either didn't want to go or didn't really have a connection with the concert. And that person's ended up one of the deceased. So I think that there may have been a couple of people bumped off in this incident, right, but not with a bomb. But this is just a working hypothesis, all right? So why would they do such a thing? Why have they fabricated this event? Well, in order to answer that question, we need to answer the following questions. What happened? Well, it was a terrorist training exercise which was made to look real. How did it happen? They used a whole load of crisis actors. Who was responsible for it? Interesting question, and it is addressed in one of UK Critical Thinkers' videos. He's made a video all about the connections to the United States with regards to the Manchester Arena bombing. So the US were the first to name the perpetrator and say that it was done by a Libyan. It was an American artist, and there are a lot of other US connections, which I won't go into just now, but you can watch UK Critical Thinkers' video on that. So let's assume that the US lent on whoever they had to in the UK to get this event organised. Why would the US have done that? Well, the US claimed it was carried out by a Libyan. What were the US doing in Libya in 2017? Well, Gaddafi was deposed in 2011, but it seems that someone, the US, is not happy with what's going on in Libya, so they've increased their number of drone strikes. So this is a graph which shows deaths from US drone strikes in Libya from 2012 to 2018. So I would suggest that the reason, or one of the reasons for the Manchester attack, was to simply justify their offensives in Libya. So, as I said at the beginning, fabricated terrorism is one of the tools of statecraft in the modern era. So they need an excuse to do this. They have to blame something on someone from Libya. So I'm just going to finish with this. If you go back to 2013 and watch my lecture from that year, you will see that I defined the phony bone of contention as controversy and discussion over two seemingly opposing viewpoints is encouraged in order to reinforce credibility of a subtextual issue which is itself a fake construct. And this recent Sun headline is a classic example of the phony bone of contention, because controversy and discussion is being encouraged over this Muslim woman. So there's two controversies. There's the controversy over whether she should be allowed in the country, and there's the controversy over whether she should be allowed free speech. I hope no one got sucked into it, please, right? So they're encouraging controversy in this particular case in order to reinforce credibility of a subtextual issue, Manchester, which is itself a fake construct. And just to commemorate this, during the break, we will be selling shitty blue burgers for anyone who's interested. Thank you. We'll come back at 1:45. I'm going to cover animal mutilations and mention a little bit about the Rendlesham Forest UFO incident. So, yeah, I've called it Mutilations, Stay Open and Explore. Now, the person who made that statement was Peter Hyatt, the statement analyst, because I got him to analyse words from Neil Armstrong. And when I gave him the Neil Armstrong analysis and paid him to analyse Neil Armstrong's words, he said, "Oh, I feel a bit guilty taking your money off you, because of course Neil Armstrong walked on the moon." But after he'd done the analysis, he said, "Well, we need to stay open and explore, I think." So that did change his mind, I believe, and his wife's. So it's a very good statement, stay open and explore. Now, the Rendlesham Forest UFO incident is Britain's most famous UFO case and probably Britain's most controversial UFO case. This happened in 1980 at an American base in the UK, American military base. Lights were seen in the sky. Some airmen were sent out to investigate, and they came across a landed craft. There were a number of people witnessed it. So it was triangular. It was about 9 feet by 9 feet by 9 feet, and pyramid-like. Very, very smooth sides. And one of these airmen walked up to it and actually touched it with his hand, and then drew a picture of it. And then at some point, the thing gradually rose off the ground to a certain height, and then just disappeared in the blink of an eye. And these airmen, they state strongly that this is no known craft. All right. A couple of nights later, more lights were seen in the sky, and the deputy commander of the base was sent out this time, and he forensically analysed the landing site of the first craft. He then witnessed lights in the sky himself, which were shining a beam down into the weapons storage area. So this is a nuclear weapons storage area, which caused great concern. It's also alleged that on that second night, which was 2 nights after the triangular craft was witnessed, another craft landed and extraterrestrials were witnessed and interacted with some of the airmen. That's the basic claims of the Rendlesham Forest UFO incident. So what I've done, I have selected the 3 what I would call most prominent witnesses in that case, and I have sent their statements to Peter Hyatts to be analysed. Now, unfortunately, he has not finished the analysis yet. All right, he's still working on it now. So I can't present any of it in this year's tour, but do look out for it, because it will be a film that I'm making probably through the summer, which will feature analysis of the words of Jim Penniston. So this is the airman who actually touched this landed UFO. He's given many interviews, and I've specifically selected interviews where the person is speaking freely and not being interrupted too much by an interviewer. Charles Holt, as I mentioned, the deputy commander of the base, I've selected an interview from him. And also Larry Warren, who's the guy who says he saw extraterrestrials. I'm hoping to clear up all of the controversy of the Rendlesham Forest incident with simple statement analysis, because I think that can happen. Shitty blue fleece. Now, in last year's tour, I spoke about this crashed vehicle. So this is, it's not a UFO, it's a man-made craft. It has a crew compartment, but the significant thing about this crash retrieval is it was a secret, undisclosed flying vehicle. So I'm going to show you a schematic that Michael Schratt drew. The information comes from a guy called Mark McCandlish, who was one of the original Disclosure Project witnesses. So this craft crashed in East Germany in 1989, and it had some very interesting characteristics. So we see it here with 3 very large spheres in each of the 3 corners. So we've got no wings, we've got no engine, we've got no propellers. So the craft is managing to stay off the ground via some propulsion system which is being generated by these spheres. Okay. Now, my opinion is it's using what's called a field propulsion system, which is something which is classified. If you look at Andrew Johnson's book, Finding the Secret Space Program, he features this drawing in there. And it's interesting that when Andrew put this in his book, he got a snotty email off Mark McCandlish. And I thought, well, why would he be upset at this? You know, Andrew was being objective with the evidence. I thought he would be happy that someone is speaking about his disclosures. Anyway, in the sketch, I noticed that in the aerial view, it's very triangular. It's almost an equilateral triangle. We see it here as well. And we note also it has dimensions on the 2 sides, length being 11 and the width 10. But that's not how Michael Schratt has drawn it. He has drawn it, well, they even give it the name, the dart, right? So to me, he's drawn it wrong. The ratio of that side to that side should be 11 to 10, according to the sketch. So what I've done, I've redrawn it with what I think are the correct ratio of the sides. I think it should look more like that. if we put some texture on there and then look at an artist's rendition of the Rendlesham Forest craft. So remember, Rendlesham Forest is 1980. This is 1989 when this vehicle was retrieved. Here's an artist's impression of the Rendlesham UFO, which is believed by many people to be an extraterrestrial flying vehicle. We put them side by side. I think, my opinion is on that first night, those airmen witnessed a secret craft, and that was highly classified, and a panic happened, so they concocted something on the third night, right? But I will wait for the statement analysis to come back from these three key witnesses before I jump in with both feet and start calling people a liar, all right? But I do hope that Peter's analysis is going to eventually shed some light on this case. Where there's been, if you followed it, you will know the arguments have been going on for decades. All right, let's come on to the issue of animal mutilation, something which is one of the most profound things happening on this planet. For those who aren't aware of it, animals are found regularly all over the world with strange surgical holes in their body. Organs are missing from the inside. Sometimes the holes are too small for the organs to pass through, so the organs are somehow removed from the body by some unknown method. Often the blood is removed. There's usually no blood on the carcass and no blood around the animal, no footprints around the animal. And this happens far more regular than people realise, and it's going on in many places around the world. So this is David Caton, who has researched the animal mutilation phenomenon for many years. He's a former aircraft engineer, and I hooked up with him in 2009, and we made a film called Silent Killers, and it's mainly about UK animal mutilation cases that David has documented along with his group called the Animal Pathology Field Unit. So you can watch the film online. It's called Silent Killers, and it's 10 years now since we made that film. We then made another film in 2010 all about one particular case, a horse called Rascal that was discovered in Sussex with many of the classic mutilation injuries on its body. Now this is Linda Moulton Howe, who's an American researcher, and she's probably the world's leading gatherer of information on this phenomenon. She's been going since the 1970s, and her website is called earthfiles.com. Please go on her website. In order to read her detailed reports on animal mutilation, you need to pay $6 a month, I think it is. The reason why I'm giving this a plug is because I've taken some of Linda's images, which are behind this $6 paywall, in order to use in this lecture. And I hope she doesn't mind me using some of her images, because I am telling people, go on her website if you want more detailed information, pay the $6 a month and read through the many hundreds of reports that she's written. So whenever she hears about an animal mutilation incident, she is extremely good at getting high definition images and interviewing witnesses, right? She's prolific. I remember when we went to that case in Sussex, my mobile phone went, and it was an international call. I didn't know who it was, and it's Linda Moulton Howe, demanding high definition images. I don't even know how she got my phone number, right? So she has gathered so many images over the years, since the 1970s. So the point is, her website is just it's full of good data. I don't necessarily agree with some of her conclusions on a number of issues, but she has collected a vast amount of evidence that I'm going to look at today. So what I've done, I've selected cases of Linda's from the last 10 years, right? This phenomenon goes back further. In fact, some people think, oh yeah, animal mutilations, that was happening in the 1970s, wasn't it? No, it's happening right now, as much as it ever was. And I'm going to show you that by starting from 2018 and going backwards 10 years. So in all of the cases I'm going to show you, because I'm going to show you several dozen cases very, very quickly, just so you get a feel for what's going on with the animal mutilation phenomenon. No tracks or footprints are ever found around the animal, vehicle prints or footprints. Sometimes the animals are in very remote locations, not near any footpath or road or easily accessible. So it doesn't look like there's been people on the ground near these mutilated animals. the evidence of animals being dropped is present, right? So quite often the animal will have broken legs or broken back, indicating that the animal's been mutilated and then dropped on the ground from a height. There's no evidence of any animal mutilation case being tranquilized before its death, right? So researchers believe that these animals are mutilated while they're still alive, okay? So what I'm going to do, it's only going to take about 10 minutes, right? We'll get through it, but it's necessary to show you all these graphic images so you get an understanding of what's going on. If you don't want to see that, then leave the room now, anyone sensitive to it. But as I say, it'll take about 10 minutes and we'll get through it, and then I can start to do some analysis on that data. Okay, so Nebraska, USA, August 2018, 9 cases of cattle mutilation. Note the map in the top left-hand corner that I've put here, which will give you a feel for how widespread these cases are happening. Santa Fe, Argentina, August 2018, precise cuts on tongues and genitals, 7 pregnant cattle mutilated. Santa Fe, Argentina again, August 2018, genitals excised, jaw strip. Thousands of other cases in this region have been reported. Santa Fe, Argentina, August 2018, rectal core, tongue removed, genitals removed and a jaw strip. Buenos Aires, Argentina, September 2017, bloodless mutilation, the farmer believes the ET hypothesis. La Pampa, Argentina, September 2017, vaginal tissue bloodlessly excised, jaw flesh, tongue, right ear and eye excised, no traces of blood in any of the cuts. Alberta, Canada, June 2017, scrotum and rectum bloodlessly excised. Colorado, USA, June 2017, udder, vagina and jaw excised. Orange spheres 3 feet wide in sky witnessed by farmer. He had suffered 5 or 6 previous mutilations. Colorado, USA, May 2017, jaw excised, rectal core, heart area incised, teats removed. Kansas, USA, December 2015, 2,500 pound bull, genitals neatly removed. It was young and fit, vet confirmed, no sign of tranquilizer and could not establish cause of death. So just think about that. Hasn't been tranquilized. I'll give you a sharp knife. There you go. There's a 2,500 pound bull in that field. Go and cut its bollocks off. Neatly. Entre Rios, Argentina, September 2015, bull and 3 cows. The 2 circles are where the penis and testicles were bloodlessly removed, cows' udders removed and sex organs removed. So this is where the penis was, and you see we don't have a hole in the carcass, so that's been cut to a very precise depth in the hide, so the penis will come away, leaving it like that. That's extreme precision. And just remember this image. This is September 2015 and it's in Argentina. So bull and 3 cows, 2 circles are where the penis and testicles were bloodlessly removed. Arizona, USA, August 2015, 1 male elk and 5 female elk. Female's teats from udders removed, rectum and vagina removed, jaw stripped. The male had the scrotum and penis removed. Alberta, Canada, June 2015. Cow had just had a 3-month-old calf, the udder removed and incision in abdomen, bloodless. La Pampa, Argentina, April 2015. Cow had jaw, tongue, eyes and genitals cleanly excised. Nebraska, USA, December 2014. Bull was in perfect health, rib incision, ear and eye excised, lower lip bloodlessly removed, broken leg and socket out of joint, probably dropped. Nebraska, USA, reported in September 2014, pregnant cow suffered jaw strip, rectal core, tongue, ears and all but 1 teat removed, both dew claws on 1 leg surgically excised, bloodless, unborn calf not taken. Kansas, USA, June 2014, jaw strip, tongue removed, genitals removed, calf was within 200 yards of the owner's house with dogs but nothing was heard. Alberta, Canada, reported May 2014, cow with front, shoulder and leg bloodlessly cut, jaw and ear stripped, oval cut into the abdomen. Nebraska, USA, August 2013, jaw strip and dew claws removed. Nebraska, USA, August 2013, pregnant cow landed head first, circular incision of rectum and vaginal tissue removed, tail excised. Nebraska, USA, June 2013, 4 cows with jaw strips, tongues removed, unborn calf removed, which was 3 to 4 months old, bloodless. The 4th cow was still alive. So this cow didn't have any mutilation injuries on it, but it was on the ground and it couldn't get up because it had shoulder injury. So that cow had been dropped from a height, but a height which wasn't high enough to kill it, just injure it. Washington State, USA reported February 2013 cow with jaw excised. Entre Rios, Argentina, July 2012, 2 cases, a horse with a chest incision, cow with jaws, genitals, rectum excised, plus extraction of internal organs. Montana, USA, June 2012, surgical excision from hide, removal of heart, pericardium sac, vulva genital tissue and roof of vagina removed. April 2012, Georgia, USA, bull calf had penis removed in a nearly perfect circle, eyes excised and bloodless. So just look at that and compare it with the image I just showed you, which was, this is 3.5 years earlier, and it's thousands of miles from Argentina, where the other one was, and we've got an almost identical incision there. Missouri, USA, February 2012, pregnant cow rectum cord, surface vaginal tissue taken, eye surgically removed, tongue excised from deep inside the mouth. Wales, Devon and Cornwall, UK, January 2012. There were 5 horses mutilated within 2 weeks. The genitals, tongue, ear, eye, teats removed, all bloodless. I've actually got a letter from the woman in West Wales who had her horse mutilated, and she was really upset about it. The police were lying to her, she claims, and also the RSPCA. Missouri, USA, January 2012, cow with udder and vaginal tissue, surgically excised. Anyone remember the game Top Trumps? I'm always thinking of new product ideas for the Richplanet website. I'm trying to break up the monotony here of this. So you will be able to buy your pack of animal mutilation Top Trumps and wear your shitty blue fleece and your 2 baseball caps, of course. Onwards. Georgia, USA, August 2011. Deer with circular excision of vaginal and rectal tissues, no blood on ground. Texas, USA, February 2011. Horse with circular rectal core, excision of face. Sussex, UK. This is my image that I gave to Linda Moulton Howe. October 2010. A gelding with jaw, neck and rectum excised, skin removed from penis, also chestnuts removed. Montana, USA, reported October 2010, pregnant cow with jaw, tongue, eye, ear and udder excised, bloodless. And note the similarity in nearby months. Okay, that's it. That's all I'm going to show you on the large animal mutilation cases. And from 1967 to 2013, every state in the United States and every province in Canada have had bloodless large animal mutilations, and no one has ever been seen, caught or convicted for them. Now here's a quote from Linda Moulton Howe's website where she explains what she thinks is going on. She says, during my investigations, I had sheriffs, deputies and ranchers tell me that the mutilation perpetrators were creatures from outer space. Why? Because they were seeing completely silent objects in the sky over pastures that looked like small airplanes or helicopters that would dissolve into misty clouds. Further, ranchers reported to sheriff's officers that beams of light were coming down from glowing objects in the night sky, and some ranchers had even seen one of their cows rise in a beam of light or be lowered in a beam of light to the ground, dead and bloodlessly mutilated. Now, for this lecture, I just wanted to take a step back and be as objective as I possibly can with this evidence and make no assumptions whatsoever, just to try and stay open and explore, which is what Peter Hyatt says, because I know that there are skeptics who they will not accept the ET hypothesis. So in any investigation, you must address the questions in this order. What happened? How is it happening? Who's responsible? And why are they doing it? So let's look at the first question and see if we can just draw up a list of what we believe is happening in the animal mutilation scenario. So what is not happening is that mutilations are not being carried out by animal predators. That's obvious from those images. Mutilations are not disease. Mutilations are not carried out by human perpetrators operating on the ground, because there's never any footprints or tracks, even when cases are left on very soft ground. You never see tracks. Mutilated animals are not being tranquilized. So a number of those cases that you saw there, their blood tests are undertaken and there's no tranquilizer in the animal. This is a very interesting quote from a farmer from 1994 who had repeated mutilations on his land, and he witnessed a cow seemingly during one of these events. I saw another cow like kneeling down on its front legs, but it did not have the hole in the rectum, it didn't have the mouth mutilated or anything. And I was just looking at it when all of a sudden I heard a loud noise. It was opposite from where I had seen the cow. It sounded like an arc welder going zzz. I looked around to where the sound was coming from, and I saw the cow that had been on its front knees had now been moved up over the wire fence to the other side. She was being tortured. That cow was being dragged sideways somehow with its legs touching the ground. The cow's back was moving toward the weird loud sound, and the cow could not move its legs to get up. So I raised my rifle and shot twice. So from that, we can say the animals are taken off the ground by something which is not visible. Okay. Very advanced surgical procedures are being carried out, as we've just seen. Now, I just want to highlight this case from February 2012. This is Ken Storch, who is a retired police officer in the United States who investigates animal mutilation cases in his spare time. So he lives in Oklahoma, and he got wind of this cattle mutilation case not far from where he lives, a few hundred miles away in Norwood, Missouri. And he was able to get to the site quite soon after the animal had been discovered. And he uses a metal detector in his research. So he got in his car, as I say, he got there very early in the morning, and here's part of the interview with Linda Moulton Howe.
We arrived in Norwood, Missouri around 7:30 in the morning. I have my crime scene kit with me. Bob has all his photography equipment, and I have a metal detector that I take with me on all cases. There's a full-grown cow, about 900 pounds. They took her tongue, and she still had hay in her mouth. And it isn't cut at the front. It's all the way down in the thorax is where they took it. Now, you tell me how they were able to take that tongue. The animal was eating when she was being operated on. She was feeding herself when she died. And her eye had been cored out, and her anus had been cored out. This is a fresh kill. The cow was probably dead sometime around 4:30 that morning. I get the metal detector out, and it's a white 2200 series metal detector. I've been using it for years. It has a program in it, and you can program it for whatever you want it for. And I programmed it for metals and platinum. And so I made sure that my metal detector was leveled out, that it was reading platinum, it was reading gold, it was reading silver. I tested it with actual platinum, gold, and silver that I carry in the case. Zeroed it out. First I wand around the carcass, out to where Galen's footprints first initiated contact. I stopped there. So I had a 10-foot radius on the carcass that I went over the ground and got nothing, not even a hit from nails. The computer reads that out. If you come across a nail or a staple from a fence or whatever, it won't read it because I'm looking for platinum and gold and silver. And so I come up to the carcass, and I start back at the anus, the udder, up to the stomach, up to the neck, and when I got to the nasal cavity, I got a hit, and it was a beep, and it popped up platinum, and it gives you a percentage, like 99% platinum. And Galen and Bob were at the muzzle of the animal, and Bob looked at me, and he goes, "You got something." And I got my readings on my test samples. It was doing the right thing. And I went back up to the nasal area of the cow, and I got nothing. Well, I moved it back, and right up underneath the eye socket of where the eye would have been, I get a boop. And when I went back up to the eye, it was gone. It had moved about 2 inches. And all of a sudden, I'm tracking this thing. It is on the move under the skin. It came up into the ear. And down in the ear canal, I can see what looks like a bioluminescent glow in the ear. I didn't actually see the implant, but it was coming up the ear canal, and it was bioluminescent. I could see a glow. You know what a lightning bug looks like?
Yeah.
Okay, it was of about that intensity, but it was bluish green, is what it appeared to be, down in the ear canal. It starts to move again, and it's headed into the neck area. I'm tracking it with the metal detector, and I moved it down to the neck.
You're where the neck is connecting to the chest.
Correct.
So he said he saw a bioluminescent glow. Now, could that be from an insect? Because insects give off this bioluminescent glow. Well, I don't think so, because he detected platinum. I don't think insects contain platinum. So what could that mean? Platinum is a precious metal that is used in jewellery, but it's also used in engineering. Now this explains some of the uses of platinum in engineering. Just want to highlight part of it, which is that platinum is employed in wires and electrical contacts for use in corrosive or high voltage environments. So let's say there was a high voltage environment that platinum is being used in, that can create a glow. High voltage creates glow. Now, if you do a bit of research into high voltage and secretized aerial vehicles, such as the book written by Andrew Johnson, high voltage is almost always mentioned with regards secret propulsion systems. And the guy did say it was on the move. Right? So is it using high voltage as part of a propulsion system which is allowing it to move around inside the animal? Right? So to me, it sounds like it's some sort of miniature drone which has got a very advanced propulsion system, possibly. I sent that clip to Andrew Johnson and asked, I said to him, well, why do you think the platinum is being detected? And he said that he thought it might be the result of a transmutation. So this is where one element turns into another element, and it is found in an effect called the Hutchinson effect, which you can read about in Dr. Judy Wood's book. But just to summarize very briefly, the Hutchinson effect has very strange effects on metals and matter, so it can make them like jelly or powder, but without heating them up. Okay, so if this was some sort of transmutation due to a Hutchinson type effect, is the object making a pathway for itself through the animal, right? But either way, whatever this thing was that this guy saw, my money is on that it's a piece of technology. It's a piece of technology that's been used in conjunction with the mutilation. So let's write down what we know is happening. An autonomous miniature drone enters the animal's body. The animal is taken off the ground by a method which is not visible. While the animal is off the ground, advanced surgical procedures are performed to remove blood, specific organs, sometimes fetuses, which are retained by the perpetrator. The miniature drone might be being used to immobilize the animal, or it might play some role in the procedures. And the animal is then dropped from a height after the procedures are complete. So that, as far as I can ascertain, is what is happening in animal mutilation cases. So we've defined the what. How is it happening? As I stated, it appears to be high technology. The surgical procedures on the animals suggest high technology, as do some of the other evidence, such as being lifted off the ground. So, who's responsible? I don't know. Sorry, folks, I haven't got the answer to that. David Caton, as you may know from my films, he believes it's not human beings doing this, that it's extraterrestrials. So I told him that I was going to be doing a lecture where I wanted to be as objective as I can with the evidence. So I said to him, well, David, you believe the ET hypothesis. Can you give me a paragraph that I can put on the screen which shows that this is extraterrestrial? Can you list me the evidence that points to ET in animal mutilations? And I got reams and reams and reams of photographs and reports from him. I said, no, I just want a paragraph. Why is it done by extraterrestrials? And he couldn't really provide that. So it seems to me that the claim that it's extraterrestrial is merely arrived at because it can't possibly be human beings. Yeah? So it's lack of evidence of human beings means it must be extraterrestrial. Yeah? So we don't have that technology. We don't have the stealth capability not to get caught. Yeah? We don't have the technology to be able to do what I've just showed you. So therefore it must be ET. That's the logic. I'm not aware of any direct forensic evidence of an ET involvement. Right? So for that reason, I'm still on the fence. Right? I know I've made other films about human mutilations where I've had people say to me that they've seen an ET, interesting evidence, right? But I'm still not prepared to commit to that, right? I want to try and be as objective as I can to keep as many people on board. Now, so let's park that one. Let's not address, well, let's address it, but let's move on to the next one, because there is some evidence on why this might be being done, the mutilation cases. So in the early 2000s, there was an organization called NIDS. This is run by this billionaire called Bob Bigelow, and he ran a project to try and explain the animal mutilations. And he had professionals working on it. You know, he was employing people with medical backgrounds who were examining the carcasses, trying to get to the bottom of the animal mutilation phenomenon. Now, I know some people would question Bob Bigelow and whether he has genuine motives. However, if you read the conclusions of their report from 2003, it's interesting because it has stood the test of time, right? This is still relevant now and matches the evidence that I've just showed you. So I'm going to read this, right? So this is a conclusion on animal mutilations that was arrived at in 2003. The primary conclusion of this paper is that the animal mutilation epidemic of 1970 to 2003 was and is a monitoring operation for an infectious agent that is spreading through the human food chain, cattle, sheep, and wild and farmed elk/deer. In North America, Canada, and the United States, the infection comprises a full-blown CWD epidemic in deer and elk and a subclinical BSE infection in cattle. The infectious agent, unlike all known viruses and bacteria, is almost indestructible, and the symptoms in people appear very difficult to diagnose pre-mortem. In short, this TSE agent is the perfect stealth killer. If the hypothesis is correct, animal mutilation operations are carried out by a knowledgeable group that is cognizant of the biochemistry and infectious potential of prion diseases and their fatal spread. So a prion disease is caused by a misfolded protein molecule or molecules, and it causes mayhem with the central nervous system. It's what causes BSE in cattle. So only recently, due to the intensive prion research carried in the past 2 decades, has the extent of prion replication become obvious in the eye, the tongue, the anus, large intestine, and reproductive organs. See above of animals. So that we're seeing that now, right? So that lines up with now. If these specific tissues are indeed removed during animal mutilation for the purpose of prion monitoring, this implies an intensive knowledge of prion physiology, biochemistry, and infectiousness, involving research results not published until relatively recently on the part of the perpetrators of animal mutilations. So what they're saying there is that the infectiousness of prions and the study of prions was not known about in the 1970s and 1980s when the mutilations were occurring. So it's as if whoever was doing the animal mutilations, if it was a prion monitoring program, had more advanced knowledge than the current medical science, right? The identity of the mutilators remains unknown, but in addition to knowledge of prion infectiousness research, a high level of technology, surgical skill, and stealth has been a feature of animal mutilations. It is a recurring theme in law enforcement circles that not a single person has been caught or charged for the crime of animal mutilations in the 30-year history of the epidemic. So the reason why I'm saying that stood the test of time is if you look at the animals that it lists and also the parts of the body that are taken, we still see that now, right? So I think that the program that this is describing is still going on now, right? So, but it still doesn't tell us who the hell is doing it, who the hell is running this monitoring program, if that's indeed what it is. It may not just be a monitoring program. They may be putting things into the environment which they are then monitoring the effects of. It might not just be a monitoring program to do with prions. Now, you often hear people say that if it was being done by a very organised human group, such as a government or a large company, that they would just fund their own research and buy their own animals and do it in private. However, if you consider the parts of the animals that are taken, it looks like they're looking at what's going into the animal and what's coming out of the animal. So this program, whatever it is, might be connected to the environment or to the earth. Therefore, running this program in a controlled space might not give them the results that they're after, that the whole program is possibly connected to the planet. Are they changing the environment and using the animals to monitor that? Are they introducing changes to the environment via these animals? I feel that the whole project is bigger than just the animals, that it's to do with the planet. So I don't think you can use that as an argument to rule out a human group. So as we say, stay open and explore. I don't know. So I've presented the evidence, and if anyone's got any thoughts on who they think is doing this, please let me know. Now, mutilation is also happening to cats. Linda Moulton Howe has got dozens of reports on her website of cat mutilation cases which have a lot of similarity with the cattle mutilations. So this comes from her website. She says, in the typical half cat mutilation scene, there is no blood on the fur or surrounding ground, with the front or back half left behind, usually the front. Organs are bloodlessly removed, as in the cattle mutilations, and missing, leaving the remainder looking like a hand puppet. On occasion, both halves of the cat are present, with a section in the middle missing. So there are similarities with the larger animals, and cats do suffer from prion disease. It's called FSE in cats, and it has a similar effect to BSE. Now, I'm going to show you one quick image of a typical classic cat mutilation case, right? So look away now if you don't want to see it. All right, now there are dozens of images like this in Linda Moulton Howe's reports, right? So this is happening a lot. No one's ever been seen, caught or convicted. Very similar modus operandi to the cattle mutilations. So if you go on Linda Moulton Howe's website and look at her reports over the last 10 years, these are all the places where she's got cat mutilation cases reported, right? Now these red dots all line up with fairly large towns or cities. So it appears that the cat mutilation cases are an urban phenomenon, whereas the other animal mutilation cases seem to be more of a rural phenomenon. So I asked the question, are they part of the same monitoring program? It's just that one arm is for urban with the cats and the other rural, perhaps. Is it part of the same thing? Because as I say, prion disease is present in cats as well. Okay. Now let's come on to the M25 or Croydon cat killer, because in our mainstream media we've seen stories about a supposed London or Croydon cat killer who's killing hundreds and hundreds of cats, seemingly with the same modus operandi. Many of you heard about this? Okay, it was on the Victoria Derbyshire show, and it's been featured in a lot of mainstream articles that there's a Croydon cat killer on the loose with a knife. So before I looked at this, I sent some FOI requests to various police forces in and around London. I only got useful data from Hertfordshire, right? So I'll just quickly list that before I go on to this Croydon cat killer. So they gave me a spreadsheet of cases of injury to cats between 2013 and 2018. So a lot of them were just air rifle or other projectiles, people being cruel to cats, 6 poisonings, 3 other cruelties. But 10 of them, about 15%, seemed to have the classic cat mutilation modus operandi with clean cuts, organs taken. So I do suspect it's going on in the UK, the same as the cases that Linda Moulton Howe has reported on. So this article is from The Guardian, the 31st of August 2017. It states that police issue a description of the Croydon cat killer, a man in his 40s thought to be behind the deaths and mutilation of 250 cats as well as foxes all over the country. He was originally known as the Croydon cat killer, but as bodies began to turn up in other areas of London and beyond, the charity urged people to drop the label. He then became known as the M25 cat killer, but attacks have since occurred as far afield as Manchester, Birmingham, Brighton and the Isle of Wight. The description of the individual believed to be behind all of the attacks has been published on the Snarl website. He is said to be a white man in his 40s with short brown hair, dressed in dark clothing. Right. Now Snarl, the Snarl website, Snarl is allegedly a charity. Many of these news articles claim it's a charity. I've looked up Snarl on the charities register. I couldn't find them listed. This is a picture from their Facebook page. Snarl stands for South Norwood, which is next door to Croydon, Animal Rescue and Liberty. Now Snarl is run by a couple called Tony and Budisa Rising. She uses a false name. And Tony here has 18 cats and Budisa has 14 cats. So they live together in their house with 32 cats and run this animal rescue operation. But they've been investigating the cat mutilation incidents, and they've been listed in the mainstream media a lot. Okay. Now, there was a mainstream documentary made called To Catch a Cat Killer, which featured their work and featured their detective work to try and catch the Croydon or M25 cat killer. It reminded me quite a lot of the Amash documentary, all about alien abduction, if you may remember it. And this documentary, for me, it was a bit of a piss take. It was trying to make these people look a bit nutty. But there was a few serious bits in it. This is Budisa Rising, who has a very interesting South African accent, and she's formerly been involved in animal rights issues. Here she is on one of the cat mutilation investigations. Here's the cat here. This is forensic examination of the crime scene. I think that's what that is. Here's a clip.
The first time I came across this is when I saw on the Facebook that, you know, there'd been some local mutilations. That was probably the 22nd of September, 2015. When you see the carcass of a cat and, you know, you've got very clean lines where the head's been removed, common sense tells you this has not been done by any kind of animal. You know, someone has cut this head off, and the only animal on this planet I know that can operate a knife is human animal.
We prepared a leaflet to put through doors, asking people to call us if this has ever happened to them. We have to amplify the opportunities for them to be called, because that is what's going to catch him, as communities aware of what's going on in their own streets. So when he makes a mistake, somebody will be there to catch it.
Right. And in the documentary, they have these two psychologists who pontificate about what this cat killer is like and how old he is, and his girlfriend must have dumped him, or, you know, as psychologists do, but possibly basing every word that they're saying on a flawed assumption. So are cat mutilations the same modus operandi, i.e. clean cuts, organs removed, as the USA? Well, here's a short clip from that documentary from a vet.
You can see here quite clearly that, just from your perspective, there's a very clean, neat cut. This injury here is not suggestive of predation. This is suggestive of a knife wound.
Whoever's doing this kills the animal, takes it off-site.
In my opinion, that's what's happening, yes. And then returns the animal at a later date. Most of the animals have been decapitated and most have had tail amputations. However, the nature of how those have been carried out has fluctuated wildly. So with the tail amputation, some of it has been done very skillfully, and it's actually gone through the actual coccyx space.
So there is surgical precision with some of the cases in the UK. Now, in the documentary, we're shown this map, which is where cat mutilation cases have been documented by Snarl. 361 of them, which as we see, seem to be centred around London and the M25. In the documentary, we see Mike Butcher, who's the Chief Inspector of the RSPCA, Andy Collin, who's a Detective Sergeant at the Met. And Andy Collin states, "It is almost a poisoned chalice to investigate because there is no obvious thing to hang our hat on." Now, when I saw this, I thought that's really unusual because from what I can determine, Bodisa and Tony are two amateur researchers. And normally the police and the RSPCA would not get involved with amateur researchers. It's unheard of, right? And I asked David Caton, who's been looking at animal mutilation cases for decades, because I know he's had problems with the police and the RSPCA, I asked him for a statement. He said that we can declare 100% that in over 20 years of investigations into animal deaths and mutilation, that not one police force or any individual officers have rendered any positive, helpful assistance to us during our many field and farm case examinations. In the few cases that farmers or animal owners have notified their local police, including the RSPCA, there has been no significant contribution, apart from issuing and recording a crime number. In fact, where there has been some input, it has been unhelpful and often obstructive. In the films that I've made with David, I've seen this firsthand myself. I've seen the RSPCA covering up cases of animal mutilation, and the police told me to remove images that I had on my website. So they're never helpful. They don't do this. So this is fishy to me. So I ask, well, what is Snarl really about? So I decided to email them. I sent the email to both Bodisa and Tony. Here's the email here. So I explain a little bit about the films that I've made, you know, just showing her that she can watch these online and that I am a serious researcher into the animal mutilation phenomenon. So I've said to her, I would like to learn more about the cat and fox cases that you have documented since 2014 for an upcoming lecture I am giving in April. I'd be very grateful if you could answer a few questions about your work and possibly supply some data. I am happy to make a suitable donation for your time and trouble. Do you have a database or spreadsheet of cases? Would you be able to supply a copy with the owner's details redacted if necessary? Can you supply photographs of the cases which least suggest animal predation, i.e. clean cuts and organs missing? Can you supply any reports from professionals, such as vets reports or pathologist reports? How many leaflets did you distribute in total and in which areas? And approximately what were the dates? Can you give me any information on how you established links with the police and RSPCA in your investigative endeavours? Other groups who have investigated mutilations have found it very difficult to establish links with the police and RSPCA. Please let me know if you can help with these questions and keep up the good work, right? So this is her reply. So I didn't get a reply off Tony, so this tells me she's probably in charge of this operation. Hi Richard, thanks for getting in touch. Unfortunately, we are not at present able to share any data or photographs, as this is an ongoing investigation and we do not wish to encourage others to copy these crimes. That rule goes for veterinary reports also. I am happy to disclose that we have distributed around 600,000 leaflets across the southeast of England around each attack site, and they remain our primary source of intelligence. Subsequently, working with a wildlife officer attached to the Met who had investigated cases of his own before the Serious Crimes Squad took an interest. They brought the RSPCA in after we found it difficult to interest them. The Met has wound down their investigation, but ours continues. I'm sorry we are unable to help further. Once, however, the case has been resolved, we will be happy to chat to you and be more open about what's going on. So she doesn't want to give me any information whatsoever. Now, let's just discuss this leaflet that they've been handing out. She said 600,000 leaflets. Here it is. Somebody actually sent me one who lives in London. There it is. And they're offering a £10,000 reward for evidence which leads to the conviction of the Croydon cat killer. Now, if you're offered a £10,000 reward and you give that leaflet to 600,000 people, that's over 500,000 people in the London area, you're going to get hundreds of responses. Hundreds. Okay? Now, just consider this map. She said that they'd handed out the leaflets in the southeast of England. They live in a place called South Norwood, which is there, which is just next to Croydon. So the cases that they got first were coming from near where they live in Croydon. It was known as the Croydon cat killer. Yeah? And then as time went by, they got cases further afield where the leaflets have been dropped. Yeah? So in my opinion, what you're seeing there on that map is just a reflection of where the leaflets got to. Yeah? So I suspect, if, for example, if they lived in Manchester and they'd done the same leaflet drops, we'd have exactly the same thing. Because I think that cat mutilation cases are occurring all over the UK, just like they are occurring all over America. So I think what they've done by dropping 600,000 leaflets only in the M25 region is they've created the Croydon cat killer. They've skewed the data, in my opinion. As we see here, it states, he was originally known as the Croydon cat killer, which is right next door to South Norwood where they live. So presumably that's where they've been sending the leaflets. But as bodies began to turn up in other areas of London, or the leaflets got to other areas of London, the charity urged people to drop the label. He then became known as the M25 cat killer. So I don't believe that there is an M25 cat killer or Croydon cat killer. So I ask the question, is Snarl an intel front, and is it being used for purposes of disinformation? That's what I suspect. I know that people who are involved in animal rights or animal rights groups have often been infiltrated by intelligence agencies. I don't know if Bodisa Rising is an asset of some sort. I'm not stating that as a fact, but I'm suspicious of the whole thing because, in my opinion, they've misled the public and the mainstream media have helped them mislead the public. But it's okay because Martin Clunes is in a plea to catch the Croydon cat killer. I'm glad we've got people like him around. So what they're doing here, they're using a fake hero or role model to prop up an intelligence psyop. So they are not centred around Croydon or the M25, and they have the same high-tech modus operandi as cattle mutilations, and it appears that there is a cover-up or muddle-up to hide the facts. All right? So as I say, stay open and explore. I don't know who's doing it. It is hard to imagine that a group of human beings is doing that. It is hard. But I wouldn't stand here and say that the technology that they have in the black world isn't capable of doing animal mutilations by stealth. I couldn't rule that out. So I'm on the fence with animal mutilations. Okay. So that's the end of today's talk. Remember, believe none of what you hear and only half of what you see. I'm Richard D. Hall. Good night. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome to Richplanet TV. I'm Richard D. Hall. Thanks to everyone who attended the recent Richplanet UK tour. By attending, you helped to fund more investigation work and more documentary films from Richplanet TV. So thank you. People are asking for more content. Please realise I have just finished quite a demanding speaking tour and I need time to rest and to attend to more mundane things first. I have had some very interesting information from attendees of the tour and it will take some time to sift through all the messages. Please be patient if you have emailed me in the last month or so. The 20th anniversary of the Jill Dando assassination is upon us on the 26th of April 2019, and the mainstream media has been peddling much disinformation about the case. The authorities know fine well who killed her, and have known from day one. Please watch my previous film on the case, available free to view online, called Kill Jill, if you want a detailed expose of the Jill Dando cover-up and an explanation of the most likely reason why the UK state assassinated her. There is a lot to update on with regards to another state operation involving the disappearance of Jo Cox, which I intend to release in a video update later in the year. Ongoing efforts are being made to contact Tommy Mair in prison, the man blamed for Jo Cox's murder, but who was nowhere near the crime scene when she was attacked. I am appealing for people to contact me who live in the Batley and Spen constituency. If you live in that area and are interested in helping to get justice for Tommy Mair, please email me at richard@richplanet.net. If you live in that area, please make contact with me. Even if you did not know anyone involved or were not a witness, you will still be able to help. Now, many viewers have emailed me to say they cannot get onto my website. All those who have made contact are using BT broadband. It appears that BT are intermittently modifying their DNS server database such that the wrong IP address is returned when a query is made on the richplanet.net domain. This essentially means BT are censoring my website. I don't know whether it is deliberate or not, but BT are the nearest thing to a state-run ISP. And I suspect Parliament also have a BT broadband connection. This means MPs in Parliament who are accessing the internet will probably not be able to see the richplanet.net website. I wonder why they'd want to do that. In order to get round this problem, you need to change your DNS server address to a non-BT one in your internet connection settings. The recent 2019 lecture tour, which I have entitled The Shitty Blue Fleece Tour, can be ordered now on DVD as a pre-order and will be dispatched on or before the 13th of May 2019. It will be released for online view around the end of June. I will be working on new research and content over the summer and hope to start a new series of shows in late summer, probably sometime in September. I will post an email newsletter out when I know more about the new series. To subscribe to newsletters, please follow this link. Sorry if it seems too long to wait. There is a lot of Rich Planet housework to do before I start making more programs, and it's important to ensure that new shows are accurate and relevant rather than speculative and full of waffle. This takes time and effort. What follows in the rest of today's show is a 45-minute video diary which I recorded on the recent tour. Please note, this is a light-hearted video intended to provide mild relief in a world which is challenging and full of misinformation. Please don't complain if you think some of it is ill-advised or silly. It's meant to be. Okay, this is the start of the Rich Planet 2019 tour, and I've driven up from South Wales and I'm now in County Durham, staying here for a few days before I go to the first venue, which is in Glasgow. Someone suggested to me the other day, oh well, do you not think they've done a deal with Tommy Mair and he's sitting on a remote island drinking cocktails or something, and he wasn't really in prison when he wrote that letter to you? I suppose that's possible. But my guess, he is in Franklin prison. But I'd love to speak to him. That would be, but as far as I'm aware, his mother's the only person who's spoken to him. Now, my sister lives here and she runs the local shop. So I'm going to go and see if I can find her. So why should people come to Ebchester Village store?
Because we sell everything.
Everything.
Even one of our locals said if someone walked out with an elephant, she wouldn't be surprised.
Do any people do their whole actual shopping here?
Yes. Not many, but some.
All right. Obviously, I have had a word with my sister about selling this propaganda, but she's running a corner shop in a village and it's the only shop, so if she stopped selling newspapers, I guess people wouldn't come here, eh, Nigel? No comment.
I'm not being involved in this.
It snowed in concert, we just had sleet.
Well, it snows in concert all the time, so... How are you feeling?
Not too bad. How are you?
Yep, good. Ready for the trip?
Oh, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's the itinerary there.
Right, good.
So stick that in your pocket.
Right, I'll keep that. I'll put it there for now. Let's finish with Tel.
We need to get Mark fitted up with a shitty blue fleece. Because that's this year's uniform.
The opening scene?
Well, it's kind of an ongoing joke throughout the presentation. I've ordered 100 of them, so...
So am I getting one for tonight? It better be funny.
This is rather ironic. BBC Scotland, I didn't realise was there, and the venue that we're at is just over here. Yeah.
I was very impressed with your Joe Cox documentary, Richard, and your one on Jill Dando, very impressive. I was wondering if you're planning to do one on Diana at any point. I mean, I know she's not an MP, but...
Yeah, Diana. I'm not planning to do one on Diana. I'm fairly convinced that she was bumped off, but I would recommend, I'm trying to think of the guy's name. He's an Australian chap who I think's done the most detailed research. John Morgan, I think he's called. He's dead now, but I think he's written a book on it. John Morgan for the Diana assassination. All right. If I was going to do a video on her, I would be basing it on his research.
Weather is actually really, really nice. Sunny, it's calm, it's mild. And we'll go to the Marriott Hotel in Gateshead.
It's now Saturday, the 6th of April, 2019. And last night was the talk in Gateshead, which was very well received. It went well. Apart from 2 people got thrown out because they kept shouting things out in the audience. It was rather strange. When I'm up here in the northeast, I stay at my mother's house, so I've just arrived here. I haven't got a lecture this evening, so I've got a day off today, so I'm just going to go into my mum's house. I'm not sure if she's in.
Do you want poached egg on toast?
Yeah, yes, please. Yep.
Or an omelette?
Poached eggs, please. Look at... No, I don't need any washing done. Look at that.
I'll do some for you.
No, I'm okay. Thank you. That's me and my brother. We used to play for a team called Ledgate Lion.
What do you think about Elon Musk's car in space?
Well, when you ask that question, are you saying, did he put a car in space or is he faking it? Or what do I think of the fact that he did that?
Well, I'm asking both, really. Did he manage to put a car in space?
Well, I don't know the answer.
How's it surviving up there at the moment?
I don't know whether he put a car in space, but I do think that he is a distraction for a secret space program.
I agree.
So yeah.
But his car in space is a bit crazy, really.
Yeah. It's kind of well, as I say, a distraction to a secret space program which isn't based on rockets. It's as simple as that. And all of his technology is rocket based, and they're trying to, I would say, make it more popular to watch Elon Musk and his rockets as a distraction from field propulsion, which I think that they are going a long way in space, my guess is. So he's a tool of those who are running a cover-up. That's my opinion. So that's why I don't waste too much time saying, well, did that rocket really launch into space with that car on it? I know there are people who are adamant that it's either CGI or filmed in a studio or what have you. He's a distraction, and that's really all I see him as. Miles Mathis wrote a very good article about him, where he goes into the family connections and stuff.
I agree he's a tool.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be interesting because I don't think it'll be long before they're claiming that he's put a man in space to the International Space Station, right? It'll be interesting to see what they say and what they show about that. But his comments about Mars, it's just nonsense, in my opinion. He's not going to Mars in a rocket. So, Ebchester Village shop. So this is, well, it's going to go to the living quarters to try and find my nephew, George. This is my nephew, George.
Hello.
Tell us about Elon Musk, George.
Oh, what do you want to know? I think he's a cool guy, to be honest. That's my opinion, though.
Did I hear you had a poster of him on your bedroom? Elon Musk?
No, I've got a T-shirt with him on, though. Do you know what it is? Do you want to see
So
it?
why is Elon Musk cool?
I don't know. He's just a cool guy.
Because he smokes a joint.
No, right. Oh, let me see if it... here it is. On his Joe Rogan podcast.
All right.
In the bottom corner there.
Did you? All right. Did you make that T-shirt yourself?
No, I saw it online. I was like, I'm getting me that.
Elon Musk smoking a joint. Yeah.
It just made me laugh. I was like, I have to own that. You like it?
Well, it's Elon Musk smoking a joint.
It is. How can you not like it?
Is that your poster there with this guy with a gun?
Yes.
Show me who that. Show me. Who's that then?
Rick Grimes.
Rick Grimes.
From The Walking Dead. And you've got his good pal Daryl next to him.
Right, so they're like famous actors, yeah?
Yeah.
Right.
Andrew Lincoln, I think it is.
Right. Alright.
And Norman Reedus.
The Walking Dead, is that like this zombie thing?
It is indeed. It was good till about season 7, and then it was very shit.
Right. So give us the premise of The Walking Dead. Because Mark's into that. You know Mark, the roadie.
Aye.
He's been to all the conventions and met all the actors apparently.
Yeah.
So what's the attraction of The Walking Dead?
I don't know. Have you ever seen a zombie movie and it's been so good that you were like, I wish it never ended? Well, The Walking Dead was like that for about 4 years, but then it kind of just got really poo.
But why? Why is a zombie movie so interesting, or why does it get your attention?
I don't know. Like I play all the zombie games. It's just something cool, isn't it?
Do you not think that maybe there's a subtle message in there that they're trying to make everyone into zombies?
Maybe. Do you reckon they're gonna bring zombies about, like try and kill everyone?
Well, I think a lot of people are zombies.
You reckon?
They call them phone zombies.
Oh,
people who are always on their phone.
Aye.
There's a word for it. I forget. It's
a zombie.
Well, but like a phone zombie.
A phone zombie.
I forget the word. Yeah.
I would just go with phone zombie. I don't know the actual word.
So where's your brother?
He would be.
Is he at work?
I don't think so. I'm not sure. He might be upstairs.
How's his motorbike going?
Very good. He took his, what do you call it, his baffle out, so it now sounds like a gate.
Right.
Mad, massive machine.
Right.
But it's just a shitty little 125.
Right. Have you passed your test yet, George?
To drive?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I can drive now.
So you doing much driving?
I drive to work when I'm allowed the car, because on an apprenticeship wage of the big fat stacks of £3.70 an hour.
Right.
It's not the best. I get like 130 a week, so not a chance I could afford a car on that, sadly. Not yet, anyway.
So, have you crashed your mum's car yet?
Twice. Once into the back of an Audi, and I took the fence out at the front of the house as well.
This is the Richplanet t-shirt for you, George. Double XL.
That's the one. Thank you very much.
Right, go and try it on, and then I'll get a shot of you in the yeah, perfect fit. That
quite dapper, eh?
Yeah.
Spot on.
Let's just get the logo there.
Whoop.
Richplanet TV.
Boy, aye.
Okay. I'm on the Durham-Northumberland border at a place called Muggleswick, and my grandparents used to live in the hamlet of Muggleswick, and then they built a house just down the road there. And behind me is an old chicken farm. Now this chicken farm used to belong to my father, who died a few years ago. It was originally started by my grandfather, who built one of these chicken sheds. And the reason why my grandparents had to do that is because they moved from the town where they lived out to the country, and they wanted to build their own house here. But they weren't allowed to do that. The council regulations prevented them. The only way they could do it is by keeping livestock and running a farm. So he put up this chicken shed behind me, and I've come back here, and it's as you see, it's fallen apart. Well, I would occasionally work here for pocket money, collecting eggs when I was 13 or 14, and I remember my grandmother working here as well. This building here is the grading room, and in there, I don't know if it's still there, was a grading machine which would sort the eggs out into sizes. Oh, there's a lock on there. This is the River Derwent. So my dad gave this business up, I would say in the late 90s, I think it was. So it's just been like this to go to ruin. You can see it's all collapsed. I remember at Christmas, my dad used to have about 5 or 6 staff, mainly women, who would collect the eggs. And he used to give them 1 day off a year. That was Christmas Day. So on Christmas Day, every year, me and my brother and my sister used to do the shift on the farm. So we'd come down here to collect the eggs at about 6 o'clock in the morning, and we wouldn't get back to the house till after lunchtime, about 12, 1 o'clock. So we had to work this shift before we could open our Christmas presents. That's the way to bring up your kids. See this trolley here, right? The workers used to collect the eggs, right? And they'd stack them up on trays here, right? And then they would wheel this, right? Along this path here, to the grading room, so the eggs would get sorted into sizes, right? But my dad got these. This is from the hospital. This is a body trolley, and so he got these. He got these from Shotley Bridge Hospital. All of the chicken feed used to be kept in that hopper there, and every once in a while a big truck would come and fill it up with grain. There's a thing inside there which rotates, and it transports all of the feed along here, and it used to make this noise. Shh. And I remember one day it wasn't working, and the chicken feed wasn't getting through. He was taking bits off, looking inside it, scratching his head. He didn't know why the chicken feed wasn't getting through. I vividly remember he took a section off here, right? He opened it up, and there was a cat wrapped around, I think they call it an auger or something, the spiral. And my dad, he pulled it out like this dead cat, and held it up by the tail, and he said, that'll be the problem then. So the cat, it got into the hopper, because I think there's a door on the side of it somewhere, and it'd gone with the feed down here, up the pipe and along, and it got stuck there. And this is where all the chicken shit used to come out, fall out of there onto the muck wagon. Stuart Silk would come and take it away and stick it on his fields, and my dad used to give him it for free. So this is well, you're a farmer, aren't you, Stuart?
Yes, alright.
So Stuart for many years has farmed the land next door to my dad's old farm. And knew my grandparents as well, didn't you?
Yes.
Is there any opinions you want to express? Because you mentioned Brexit there. What do you reckon about Brexit?
Well, in my opinion, I think it's we can't go back in now. I think we've got to get it sorted out and to where we work with Europe properly. You know, but what's still independent the way, because if we go back in, I think it'll be even worse, won't it?
Right, that's what I think, yeah.
But we'll just have to wait and see, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, and you mentioned Boris Johnson before.
Yes.
You said you're for Brexit, but you don't want Boris as Prime Minister. Is that?
Well, I'll just laugh at that one. Yes. Well, it's just the whole thing's a bit of a nightmare at the minute. I don't know what you think.
Well, it certainly is that, yeah. Yeah. I'm not exactly sure of where it gets its name from. There are legends of giants, one of them called Mug, another one called Concert, or Corbridge. Do you know much about the name Muggleswick, Stuart?
Well, it evidently has an awful lot of history to it, more than what I realised. And of course, the buildings up there are now you can't do anything with them because in round Muggleswick they're listed.
Right. Well, have you heard any of these legends of giants in this area, named after Cor and Ben, the Benfield side, and Con and Mug?
Well, I have myself, but there is all sorts of stories running about, so I mean, I just don't know some of them, you know.
All right, so I'll let you get on.
Thanks very
I'll
much.
probably only use a few seconds of that, right?
Well,
but I'll not make you look stupid, honest.
I know you wouldn't know, just that's grand.
Right.
But anyway, I'll definitely be in touch and let you know how I come on here.
Right, right.
But there is going to be, all I'm going to say is there's going to be some red faces at the end of this.
Right.
And people in high places.
Right, okay.
So,
well, let us know, Stuart. Okay, take care, bud.
Thanks
all
very
right,
much.
right.
Cheers.
See you soon.
Thank you.
Ta-da. And Wick makes you think of Wicca, which is pagan, I guess. I know that the church here was built on a pagan site. I think the other definition of the name is that Muggleswick was a dairy farm owned by Muckle. Now, not long ago, there were some stamps came out which featured Harry Potter, and in order to sort of celebrate these new stamps, the BBC came to Muggleswick. And the reason why they came here is because in Harry Potter there are these characters called Muggles, and Muggles are basically minions or serfs or nobodies. And the BBC came to Muggleswick and they were asking local people, do you feel like a Muggle? Do you feel like a nobody? Yeah? When actually that is not the definition at all. It's possibly a giant or a dairy farmer, but certainly not a minion.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Richplanet 2019 UK tour. We'd like to inform you that shitty blue fleeces are available while stocks last.
Here we are again at Manchester, and yesterday I was at Belfast, and we got to the airport.
I made a mistake.
And Mark was meant to be coming with us to Belfast, but he forgot his passport.
Hi, Mom.
How was the youth hostel in Manchester, Mark?
Well, it's absolutely well. For £15, you kind of grumble, but every hour, you know, you've got three blokes here, and it's like, oh, pardon. One guy was having a nightmare. He's like, no, stop. Help me. Take my five. It's like, shut up.
So you have to share a room. I haven't been to a youth hostel before.
No, I've been too many times. It's the cheapskates like me who want to save a lot of money. Like I say, £15 a night, you kind of grumble, but you know,
I mean, people might think that I'm the cheapskate for not putting it up, but I'd already paid 80 quid.
Yeah, it's fair enough.
For a hotel in Belfast.
And it was my idea because I have stayed there before, so I'm kind of used to it all. But yeah, someone getting up at 2 in the morning, you know, no consideration for everyone else in the room, sticking the lights on, you know, sitting in the toilet like.
So I'm sporting the shitty blue fleece on this year's tour.
Aye.
The Andrew Johnson fleece. Sold a few. So that's how you turn a negative into a positive.
So far, he hasn't spilt any tea or coffee.
Yeah, so Mark was getting a bit paranoid about someone actually taking over his job.
I'm just your biggest fan, Richard. You don't need Mark. Don't worry, I've kept his head.
So Mark's had visions that a Richplanet fan is going to kill him.
Yeah, some psycho I haven't met yet, but I'm sure he's out there. He's going to off me to get in with Richard. I'm just your biggest fan, Richard. For some reason, he's going to be from Barnsley. He's going to have a tattoo of Richard's face on his chest.
Just put his body in the back of the van, Richard.
I thought he was MI5. I did good, didn't I, Richard? I heard your voice tell me to do it, so I did it. Well, I think it's the Killers, you know.
I hate that song, Mark.
Are we human? Are we dancer? He was like, are we human? Are we dancer? My mind is on. It's too high.
So you got me full face in there.
Your full face.
Yeah.
And your big brow.
So just ask us about the Kenny Riley thing.
When I first met you, what was this, about 18 years ago? You used to do like stand-up.
I did about 6 gigs.
Yeah, and you had like a
and I invented this character called Kenny Riley. Yeah.
Will tell us a bit about Kenny Riley.
Well, Kenny Riley was from Rochdale, so I used to try and do a Rochdale accent, because whenever I did an accent, it came out half Yorkshire and half Mancunian, which in Rochdale's halfway between. So
Get off.
Kenny Riley, international tour guide to the rich and famous. He was a tour guide, so he's like a little bit of a sort of what do they call him, John Shuttleworth. He was a bit like him, maybe a bit like Alan Partridge. So my sister Veronica, she works in Everything's a Pound. That's where everything's a pound. And what I like to do, I go in there, right? I go in, and I go and get something like a can of deodorant or something like that. I'll say, Veronica, how much is this? You'll say, fuck off, Kenny. So, yeah, but, her husband, Brian's got one of those Range Rover Discoveries. I don't know what he thinks he's going to discover. They go to McDonald's in it, which I think it's already been discovered. Built, well, not really discovered. I've been all over the world. I've been to the Isle of Wight, been to Torremolinos twice, because I am an international tour guide to the rich and famous. Yeah, so I'm presenting some awards at this football presentation night, and I've got my red card in my pocket, just in case anyone gets out of hand. I've got my whistle. We're going back a lot of years,
50 years
when I used to do this. So he said, what was it again? He's got the red card and he sends them off. He says, get off with the red card. And he goes, do you know what? I've always wanted to do that, send someone off with a red card. I could do it when I'm talking to my wife, couldn't I? Yeah, I go in tonight. I say, you did not tackle the housework correctly, and you did a big dirty foul in the downstairs toilet. Get off! I'm at Kegworth, which is between Nottingham and Derby, and last night was the 6th Richplanet talk. Went very well. I think there was about 180 people there. We stopped back at the bar at the hotel last night, had a few drinks. I've been trying to extract Mark from his room because he didn't come out when he was supposed to at 11 a.m. Oh, here he is.
How you doing?
Good. Yeah, you should be all right for the train. It's
God.
His train is at 16 minutes past 12. It only takes about 20 minutes to get to the station, so you should be all right. But we better crack on now, like.
Right, let's get cracking.
All right. I spoke to Dr. Martin Roberts last night. He is very well versed on the Madeleine McCann case, and he's written a book about the Whitechapel murders. He was telling me about that, very interesting. And it was, about a dozen people in the bar last night, Mark, and yeah, very interesting crack. I'm going to drop Mark off at Derby train station. He's heading back to Newcastle, and then I'm going to drive back down to South Wales and meet up with Double R2, Richplanet roadie number 2.
There's no patch on me. I'm the biggest roadie, Richard. He's no good for you. You don't need any fans anymore. You got me. You just play in front of me all night. Then when Richard turns up and realises he's forgotten the stage, he's like, you don't need a stage, Richard. You can stand on me. It'll be an honour. Don't worry. I've kept his head. It won't get back to you, I promise. Oh, by the way, Richard, I've decided I'm just going to live in the van for a few months. Is that okay? Well, Richplanet, 2020.
Right.
Right, miss. Been a pleasure.
Well,
I'll catch you next. Well, just give us a bell when you're next.
Right. Ta-ra. I'll get in touch next time I'm in concert.
Make sure you do, Richard. I'll be waiting for you. I'll hide the bodies.
So we've just arrived at Birmingham, the E57 Social Club. Move into the light. That's it. Point at the screen. So that's the end of today's talk. Remember, believe none of what you hear and only half of what you see. I'm Richard E. Hall. Good night. Thank you. So tonight I'm at the Bedwas Workman's Hall near Caerphilly, and it's an old theatre. Lloyd has helped me immensely with my website.
Oh, yeah.
And if anyone needs any applications developed, web applications or anything bespoke, PHP, what other languages, Lloyd? What's your?
Bit of, usual JavaScript, all that, but PHP is the main thing I use for web stuff.
For example, Lloyd, he developed the ticketing system that I've got on my website, which has saved me quite a lot of money. Automatically generates the tickets and emails them out there, which there was I couldn't find any solution that was like available off the shelf from anywhere that would suit what I needed.
No, so I added that onto the open cart setup that you got, so it's a good example.
Yeah.
Type of thing I can do,
All right, cheers, Lloyd.
Thank you.
Tickets, please, sir. Where's your Richplanet t-shirt, Chris?
It's underneath.
Double R2 wasn't too happy about that because of last year we shared a room, and well, what was the problem, Chris?
You break wind a lot, Rich.
And we drove from Bournemouth to Kent last night, so we're staying here in Gravesend for a couple of days. There was an interesting Q&A session after the talk yesterday. Now there's one chap who I've been in contact via email, and he's been trying to contact Tommy Mayer in prison. So Tommy Mayer is the man who has been convicted of murdering Joe Cox, but was nowhere near the crime scene when the murder happened. He was framed. He's a patsy, right? So this chap's been trying to contact Tommy Mayer in prison. He hasn't received any replies. You may recall that I received one reply to a letter I wrote to Tommy Mayer, but after that, no replies. He submitted a Freedom of Information request in relation to his communication with Tommy Mayer, and in that reply he was told that the correspondence was being put in Tommy Mayer's property box. So this is a box that all prisoners have in prison, where the property is put in there when they go into prison, and they get it when they leave prison. So if something's put in your property box, you don't have access to it while you're in prison. So this is probably where my letters have been ending up. Now this chap who spoke last night has also contacted Tommy Mayer's legal team. He's had no reply from Tommy Mayer's legal team, so it seems that Tommy Mayer's own legal team isn't interested in new evidence which was not considered at the trial, new evidence which would get him out of prison. So why is his own legal team not interested in defending him? There was another chap in the audience who's done a lot of research into Tommy Mayer's alleged interest in far-right groups. So this comes from the United States, and shortly after Tommy Mayer was arrested, miraculously the mainstream media pulled out some receipts from the 1990s, receipts from purchases that Tommy Mayer allegedly made in the 1990s, which this researcher has looked in detail at the timeline of the release of this information, and it's completely implausible. It shows foreknowledge that somebody had that Tommy Mayer was about to be arrested. Okay, so I hope to go into more detail on a lot of this in a Joe Cox update that I'm going to do after the tour. Ready to go? He doesn't like being on camera. Double R2 is not happy sharing a room with me because he says I fart too much in my sleep. Here he is. Double R2, how's it going?
Well,
everything under control?
Pretty quickly.
Yeah, so I'm in High Wycombe, I'm with Mark Devlin, and I was just asking you about David Bowie. Any general thoughts on him?
So, is it possible that David Bowie faked his death? Well, I'm sure this sort of thing does go on. I certainly think that happened with Elvis Presley. I certainly think that happened with Jim Morrison. I can't say for any certainty with Bowie. It could well be that rarest of things, a genuine event that happened just the way we were told.
The album, his last album that he produced, the Black Star album, I thought that was almost as if it was a signing off thing. This is my last thing. That he knew that was going to be his last thing before he was even ill, perhaps. So it's that album really that makes me think that was his exit from the music industry. Do you see what I mean?
So it was loaded with symbolism. The two videos that came out, Lazarus and Black Star, were absolutely laden with occult and esoteric symbolism. And as you say, it seemed to indicate a man who knew he'd reached the end of the road and was preparing to bow out artistically with one last great flourish of work. But then again, you get the story that he died of cancer at the age of 69. Now, somebody in David Bowie's position, very creative individual, artistic individual, would certainly have access to information about holistic and natural cures for cancer. He doesn't strike me as the sort of guy that would go running to his GP to get the latest bout of radiotherapy or chemotherapy. He would have heard about things like cannabis oil and all these natural cures for cancer that we get told about. And it strikes me that he would definitely have researched these options. So we again get the possibility that maybe he didn't go the way we're told he did. But that he retired the public persona and was able to bow out of the public spotlight for his last few years.
Yeah, and just one quick word on Prince. You're 100% convinced he was murdered?
I do feel that Prince was genuinely taken out, because of some of the controversial comments that he made. He, to my mind, became a bit of a loose cannon. He became unpredictable. Maybe it was the mind control programming wearing off, because it's pretty clear to me that Prince was subject to mind control programming probably from a very young age. And I do think with artists that go off the rails and start making comments in public that aren't approved, they tend to outlive their usefulness. And I feel that's what happened with Michael Jackson. I feel that's what happened with Prince. It's possibly what happened with George Michael as well. So we get examples of this. And when it comes to celebrity deaths, I think you have to treat each one in isolation and look at the evidence rather than making a blanket statement like they're all taken out or they all fake it.
Yeah, and you've got some quite detailed lectures on Prince. So where can people find those, Mark? What's your website so that they can get your lectures?
Well, I go into the Prince situation in some detail in my book Musical Truth Volume 2. So that's available on Amazon, and from me personally, you can find it on Amazon, which is the easiest way. And I've done a bunch of talks where I've addressed the situation with Prince and George Michael, and some of the strange symbolism surrounding their deaths. So you can find those talks on YouTube on my channel, which is Mark Devlin TV. Just look at some of the conference talks that I did through 2016 and 2017, and I go into all of that.
So Musical Truth 1 and 2, they're your two main books, Mark? Yeah?
That's right, with Volume 3 on the way in due course.
Right, okay.
This shit never ends.
All right. So can you give just a general synopsis of what Musical Truth Volumes 1 and 2 are about? Okay, it's the hidden side of the music industry as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, it goes into the true nature of the corporate music industry and what it's been used for since day one, which is, in a nutshell, aspects of mass mind control, social engineering, thought entrainment, subliminal occult influences. All this stuff gets achieved through entertainment, under the radar, under the guise of fun and letting your hair down and forgetting all your worries. But when you do that, your guard is down and you're not on the lookout for subversive influences. And that's what these industries have been used for many, many decades. So I detail the different tactics and methods that are used.
All right, thanks very much, Mark. Appreciate you coming to the talk as well.
No worries, mate.
All right. As you will know, Andrew Johnson is a regular commentator on the show who researches many areas without being paid, purely out of his own thirst for knowledge and understanding of the kinds of subjects we discuss on Richplanet. Some viewers have commented on Andrew's blue fleece and yellow t-shirt. One viewer said, "Has Andrew Johnson got an addiction to that f***ing rotten blue thing he always wears? He has been seen to wear that shitty blue top on your show for years now." And now we've driven to Norwich, so it's about a 3-hour drive, so it's now 3:05 in the morning. But we've got 2 nights here at this nice hotel. How are you feeling, Chris?
Well, I'm enjoying my jam donut.
Double R2 is eating a jam donut.
At 3 a.m. Yep. That was really nice.
So, how do you feel the tour's gone so far, Chris?
Really well.
Yeah?
Yep. Good attendance at all the venues since Birmingham. Lots of interesting people.
We should be able to relax a bit now, I think, because the van's been making really funny noises, and I've had visions of it conking out, but it hasn't. And I think there's a problem with the clutch.
I don't think you need a mechanic, Rich.
Yeah?
No, just ask Nick Colostrom. There's no noise. Well, there can't be a problem.
And there's a full moon out there. Looks like a full moon. What are you looking at there, Chris?
I think I can see the 3 stars of Orion's belt.
Right.
Which I believe lines up perfectly to the pyramids. But I'm not convinced about these ancient Egyptians that built the pyramids, Richard. I think that the technology employed and the precision of those pyramids is just far too accurate for the way in which human beings, if they were human beings, were thousands of years ago. And
yeah, I don't agree with the official dating of the pyramids for sure.
No, I don't believe it's 4,500 years. I think it could be 50,000, maybe 100,000, maybe more.
And is there a link with what is on Mars?
Quite possibly.